The RTM, and we'll start with the roll call.
Adams?
Well, do you want to do this first? What? Roll call.
Somebody was doing?
No, roll call. Roll call.
Thanks. Adams?
Here.
Bailey?
Here.
Bordelon?
Here.
Casper?
Here.
Chase?
Here.
DeSiller Fleming?
Here.
Frickman? Gustafson?
Here.
Hanscom? Kotowski?
Here.
Lambert? Marley? Marshall? Martin?
Here.
Massett?
Here.
McDermott?
Here.
Melendez?
Here.
Mello Miller?
Here.
Merritt?
Here.
Monahan?
Here.
Newsom?
Here.
Oliver? Pasqualini? Perry?
Here.
K. Powers?
Here.
S. Powers?
Here.
Pacino? Quinn? Richards?
Here.
Rogers?
Here.
Stanford?
Here.
Starkley?
Here.
Stevenson?
Here.
I. Streeter?
Here.
J. Streeter?
Here.
Strode? Washington? Wells?
Here.
Whitehouse?
Here.
Whitney? And Evan.
Here.
We have 30.
We have 30, and I just wanted to say I had received correspondence from Representative Washington, Oliver, Lambert, and Marshall that they would not be here this evening, and from Representative Hanscom that she would likely be late. And I also had one other thing to announce, which is the Water Pollution Control Facility public hearing for the fee increase will be Tuesday, May 28th, 2019 at 6:30 p.m. in the Town Hall Annex. Representative Streeter, did you want to address the
Thank
body?
you, Madam Moderator. I just want to say, if I don't get buzzed out here, thanks.
Yeah, sorry.
Sean, thank you.
Everybody's got to put the,
Yeah, put your things down, because apparently we're over
Yeah, down,
over mic'd
all the way down.
in this. No, the down, not up. The opposite of up. Thank you.
We all set now? How we making out back there, the audio?
no, down.
Yeah, it's
We got a lot
the
of
up that
buzzing
gives you
out
the reverb.
Push them
Yeah,
down.
perfect.
As we all know, we all ran for election, and this is for the RTM, and this is one of the main reasons why we did this. And yes, it's very taxing for us to come on every night. Some of us don't make every night. But I want to pay tribute to one person tonight that's on the representative town meeting. She's going through some health issues, and she has made every one of these meetings. And out of gratitude, I'd like to present Portia Borderline with some flowers.
Thank you, Representative Streeter. I would just echo that. I'm impressed. So, let's see, sorry. I have to switch gears now. So I want to just commend everyone on the attendance. We've had great attendance throughout this budget season, so thank you. I think it's been really well, and hopefully this can be our last meeting of this season. Let's see, we do have accounts on the floor, and I believe Representative Mello Miller will come up and read her minutes
For each account.
for each, and just read them for, the account will pause, and as we did before. Thank you. Ooh, scary. There's a thing below it, if you, that helps.
The Parks and Recreation meeting met, the RTM Parks and Recreation Committee met on April 22nd at 6:28 p.m. to consider the FYE 2020 budget for Parks and Rec. Members present were Kathy Chase, Juan Melendez, Ellie Starkley, Nancy Miller. Absent was Thomas Frickman. A quorum was declared. Also present were Mark Berry, Eric Morrison, Mary Jo Riley, Jerry Locken, and Todd Goodhue. So the first account we are discussing tonight is, I believe, account 320. Is that correct?
Well, on our agenda is 1064, but we can certainly.
Oh, I apologize. We can do 1064. So account 1064, Parks and Rec. A motion was made for $1,592,779 made by Representative Chase and seconded by Representative Melendez. Representative Chase asked to explain what account 1064 was, and Mark Berry, the Director of Parks and Rec, explained that it was the tax-supported fund for the department. It includes full-time staff, administrators, financial assistant, and the full-time park staff. It covers some of the part-time staff for the senior center and summer employment. The operating side is small. It includes supplies for the parks and supplies, i.e. the portalette, and what's self-sustaining and what's not. Jerry Locken included that account 3240 is directly related to a program. It's the activities fund, and if nothing is related, to a program, it goes into 1064. Representative Chase asked what happens when you sign up for a trip. Mary Jo Riley, who's the director of the senior center, said that not all trips you can sign up for online. You have to fill it out in person. And the programmer spends time with people explaining trip details. They offer about 6 trips a year, and it's customer service. Mark Berry added that they used to have 4 program supervisors for recreation. There were 2 for the recreation side and 2 for the senior center. And there are 2 for recreation and 2 for the senior center. They're doing 3/4 of the programs with half the staff. Jerry Locken included that folks that are doing the programming are also doing the planning for the trips. They are the organizers as well. The 4 programmers take 250 individual programs each, totaling 1,000 programs. Representative Miller asked why the change in cost. Mr. Berry explained that they spent a little bit more than budgeted. They are not taking out community events. They did change over to a holiday event versus the Christmas parade, and it saved the police money, and it was a lot more interaction having an event, like a little community for the community event as opposed to for the holiday event. A motion, 4 voted in favor, 0 opposed, and 0 abstaining. Madam Moderator, I'd like to make a motion for $1,592,779 for account number 1064.
Chase.
All right, we have a motion on the floor for account 1064, $1,592,779, made by Representative Mello Miller and seconded by Representative Chase. Is there any discussion on this motion? I have, okay, Representative Newsom.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I'm looking at page 159. I was looking at account 5101. So help me understand why last year you asked for $1,129,000, but you think at least under the estimate there's about $20,000 that you're not going to spend this year. Is that $20,000 not there because the time you put this number together, you just hadn't a plan to spend it, or?
When this number,
It's on.
when this number was put together, there was actually 2 people that ended up retiring. So that's why the estimate number is lower than what we had adjusted for FYE 19.
And you replaced those 2 people with, or did you did replace those 2 people, I assume, right?
We did, but when an employee leaves, there's a lag between the time that they leave and the time that a new person gets hired. So there's, that period in between when we're going through the process, the hiring process, that money is not being spent for those positions.
And what's going to happen with that money if it doesn't get spent?
It goes back to the general fund.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question too. I was just curious, on page 158, it shows $2,750 from senior center fees. Is that really all the fees that are accumulated from the senior center? That seems shockingly low, given the amount of people that use this place.
No, that, the money, program fees goes into 3240 account. So
Yeah.
this money here is for rentals. If people rent the space, that money goes into this account here.
Okay. And that other money just goes to pay the folks who are leading the classes then?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. Any other questions? Representative McDermott?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Mark, I have two questions with regard to two of the parks. The one is over at Pequannock, along the river there. I use that once in a while, but that park, the wood part of that structure is in pretty rough shape, it looks like. And do we have any plans to, like, take care of that at some point?
You're talking about the Pequannock
Walkway
River walkway
that goes all the
that
way
goes
up to
along the
Bluff
river?
Point, the road up there?
Yes, we do maintain that on a regular basis. That is an older structure.
Yeah.
As boards get weak, they are replaced, but at some point, probably in the not-too-distant future, we'll have to look at what we're going to do with that, whether we're going to replace it or not replace it.
It's a beautiful spot.
It is,
It really is
yes.
a lovely place.
Yep.
And the weeds or the whatever it is that grows up along the water side, that has a lot of trash in it.
Yeah, that's
Not,
it.
you know, it's just part of the problem with people walking on it. They just throw things over there, I'm sure. But I don't know if there's anything you can do about that. Maybe cut down some of those weeds so that it's easier to get at that stuff.
Yeah, that's a tricky area for us because it's close to the water, and you have to be careful with what you're doing so close to the water. We do cut the weeds back. They grow prolifically, but we do cut them back as often as we can. But there's nothing that we can do to kind of like permanently get rid of them.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So we'll continue to, there'll be ongoing maintenance.
Okay. Because when we did our cleanup a couple of weeks ago, we pulled a bunch of stuff out of there.
Yeah.
I mean,
And it-
probably some of it's private property, I have no idea, but we did go into that area and pull a lot of things out of there. I don't know how, they must have been there for years. But I'm talking about things like tires and stuff like that.
Yes, yeah.
The other question I have is the park that's on the corner of Pequannock and Route 1. It's kind of, it's right next to Dunkin' Donuts over there. Is there anything we can do with that to make it like more of a,
Well,
you know,
that's,
a spot that's attractive? It's kind of set off by itself, but it's in a perfectly, just a magical corner if we can dress that up.
yeah, that's the Avery Memorial that you're speaking of?
Yeah, that's right there, yes.
Yes, yeah. We actually started some work in there this winter, cutting back some of the brush that's grown out. The challenge to that particular park is, again, there's a lot of wetlands, so we're restricted in what we can do. So we got permission from the Wetlands Commission to go, there's actually a small stone bridge in there, and we got permission to clear up to that stone bridge and actually within the boundaries of the bridge, but we can't go any further into that area. So, and because it was such a wet winter, we haven't been able to finish the work in there, but the plan is to go back once, if it ever dries up, to go back in and clean up the remaining brush that's in there.
Well, if you can dress that up a little bit, it's such a focal point for the town that it could be a great thing to have happen if we can do it, figure out a way to make that happen.
Yeah, and the memorial portion of that park is actually managed by the Avery family. So there's that whole area is not all town property.
You're right, I know that, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Chase?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Can you explain, I'm kind of piggybacking on Representative Newsom's question, with the regular FTEs, if you replaced 2 people with 2 people, why it's a $50,000 increase? And the other thing is the office assistant 2 is a 13% increase. Can you explain that?
Okay, so page one, are you referring to page 160?
159 for the $50,000 increase on the regular full-time, 5101?
Oh, okay. So you're talking the number between what was adjusted for 19 and what's requested for this year?
Correct.
Okay. Well, I know part of that is just collective bargaining agreement. You know, this. Yeah, right. There's. Right.
Because usually when you replace an employee, the person that comes in is at a lesser salary.
Right. And then one of the changes that we did make is we had an OA3, which was a 35 an hour week position, and we did not replace the OA3. We replaced that position with a 40-hour salary position. So there's a difference. There was like a $12,000 difference there.
Higher?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, because they're working more hours. And then the other was as John said, was the negotiated union contract and pay increases.
For the office assistant?
Well, for just about everybody that works there's only 4 people in our department that aren't in the union.
Okay. So does that explain why there's a 13% increase for the office assistant 2? I know you have 3 of them, it says.
I'm sorry.
The office assistant 2?
Yes, we had 2 people retire last year. One was an OA3 and one was an OA2. We did replace the OA2. We did not replace the OA3 with an OA3. We replaced her with a community outreach coordinator, which is a 40-hour salary position.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
I kind of wanted to go back to the financing again, because I see cost center 10644, which is the food concession, is about 73,443, and then the transportation for the senior center is, roughly 151,000. And then the programming is 280,000. Is that correct?
Yes, you're reading those numbers from page 158?
I am.
Okay.
And so I know that the transportation, there's fees that are collected, and I know for the food, because it says on the front page that there's $4.75 charged to each meal, and you just told me that the program fees goes to account 3240, and so I'm just wondering, why isn't some of those fees used in financing this? I'm not seeing where the financing comes back. The loop is closed with what you're getting out of those fees. And maybe I'm not that familiar with this budget, but if you could explain it to me, that would be helpful.
Okay, so let's start with the transportation.
Yep.
So you're asking where the revenue side of that is?
Exactly. That's what I'm wondering, where the revenue of all those sides is.
Okay. Well, the senior transportation, there's a minimal fee for that.
I know my mother's a senior.
Yeah.
I'm familiar with the fee.
Right. So there isn't a whole lot of revenue generated for that.
No, there must be some.
There is some, yes. And then the food concessions,
Yeah.
Yeah.
It says right on the front, it's 475.
oh, the cost of a meal, you mean?
Well, I'm just wondering where the money that people pay for these services goes, and why isn't it used for financing the programs? I don't see that. I don't see that part of it.
Oh, that's going into the 3240 account.
Can you show me where that is, please?
Sure.
That's on page 166, right? Probably should have done this account first.
So if you look at the senior food concessions, and this is page 167. So the revenue from the food concessions is, well, for next year, it's projected to be $82,000.
Yeah. And where's the transportation? Is that in this too?
It's probably senior programs, right?
Is that in senior programs?
Madam Moderator, can I call Mary Jo Riley, the
Oh,
Director
sure,
of the
thank
Senior
you.
Center, to
Ms.
maybe
Riley, would you
answer
like
the
to
question?
help me understand this at least? Thank you.
Everything in the 106.4 budget for the senior center is staff, full-time staff. So for the kitchen, it is the full-time food service supervisor. For programs, it's the full-time staff, plus the building supervisors, drivers, and what we have under operational is just the vehicles. The revenue under 106.4 is the $2 we charge for shopping and for medical appointment rides. Everything else is in 3240.
Okay, and where are those fees then? Where do they end up?
In 3240.
The medical and the transportation that you just
No,
mentioned?
that's the $2,500
Oh, okay.
that you're seeing.
I thought that Mr. Berry said that was for leasing.
Sometimes when we have leasing, it will be there, but that's the $2 fee also.
Okay, so you only make $2,750 on all your transportation and the,
Not all the transportation, just medical and shopping. And we also have a $300,000 grant with 12 other towns to do medical transportation. So right now, because that grant is spent out, we are getting more revenue for medical transportation, but generally, it's about $2,000 that we bring in for medical transportation.
where does the fees for just regular transit to the senior center go?
We don't charge
Yeah,
fees
there's
to
no
come
charge
to
for
and
that.
from the center.
Okay, really? Because my mom said she does pay for that.
No, she doesn't
Okay.
pay to and from the
All
center.
right, maybe she's confused. All right, thank you. Representative Stevenson?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I guess this is a question maybe for the town manager. Why do we have these accounts broken up like this? Can you explain why that is?
I'm going to give your least favorite answer. If you want the history, I got to bring Cindy up because it was long before I got here that they were set up this way. I've only been here 2 years. This
Yeah.
is the ongoing,
fix
the way
everything.
it's been tracked over time. But I don't know if Cindy's got any more detail on it. Is she, Cindy? Or maybe Jerry? Again, once they're set up too, I'm hesitant to switch it around because it ruins the history of it.
So one of the things that the 3240 fund does for Parks and Recreation is it allows us to program kind of as much as demand allows. So as long as we bring in revenue, we can run all kinds of different programs. If they were in the general fund, we'd have to have each of these specific programs in the fund, planning out like 18 months of what people are going to be interested in.
No, I understand the funds. I just understand the two different cost centers, though.
Correct, and that's why I'm explaining why. So if people, if the RTM and the town council put all of the money into the general fund, if we didn't realize the revenue, we would still have the opportunity to spend all of that money, even if the revenue didn't come in. Because the general fund, once you appropriate that money, it's available for us to spend. If you put it into a special revenue fund, we can only spend up to the amount of revenue that we bring in. It's kind of like, it's a mechanism to put the brakes on and prevent, frankly, the department from overspending. As long as revenue is in the special revenue fund to provide for the programs, we can do them. If you put that all into the general fund, the revenue wouldn't have to be there. Taxpayers would have to fund it regardless of if people were interested in the programs or not. So it's a safety net for the taxpayer, frankly.
And that necessitates it to be in two cost centers like this then? Is that what you're saying?
That was the intent when we created the fund, to allow Parks and Rec to program up to the revenue that we brought in. As long as people were paying revenue to provide, to pay for the programs, we could offer those programs. Taxpayers are held harmless, and it prevents putting taxpayers on the hook for additional appropriations.
But now that we have that account established, can we recombine them back into one account and still keep that separate fund?
If you put it all into the general fund, you could take the number of $1 million in the special revenue fund, 3240, and $1 million in general fund, and you give us a $2 million appropriation. If we didn't bring any money for program fees, we could spend $2 million.
Right, and that's tied back to cost centers.
Correct. If it was all in the general fund, we could
I
be.
just want to listen to this because I want to ask a
We'd have to
question.
set the mill rate to account for that.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you're essentially adding, you'd be adding $1.5 million.
I feel as a constituent, it just doesn't, it's kind of a complex answer for something, and just maybe we could take a look at it or something. It just seems to be unnecessarily complicated, that's all.
And I have just a follow-up because of what you said, and I know this is on a different cost center, I apologize, just because there is a fund balance applied to 3240, so we are putting in, over 40,000 more than we did last year, and so, the request this year is 64,000 out of our fund balance, out of, is that the general?
It's the fund balance for 3240.
How much is in 3240 then?
Fund balance?
Yeah, is there,
I don't know off the exact number, but I'd say it's around $300,000.
and why isn't that just used up then?
I didn't understand the
Why
question.
don't you expend it?
We actually maintain, just like we'll talk about the golf course as well, having a fund balance allows us to provide for unexpected problems or lower registration. It's a cushion that allows us to sustain operations.
Representative Bordelon?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I was just going to bring up the fund balance from the meeting with the RTM that I had watched. I was curious as to why we're not, where's the number that you guys set to keep that number at, and where,
This is for a different account for 3240.
Representative Whitney?
We're jumping ahead to the next account. So
they were talking about the
I
fund
was
balance.
asking because Mr. Locken
I'll wait
mentioned
then.
it.
I'll wait then, that's fine.
That's fine, we'll
I
wait.
just
We
got
can
caught up in
wait
that conversation.
for this discussion till then.
I'll go back to my other questions then. My apologies. Looking at the recreation that is, offered in the town, which is great, have we recently looked at any surveys to see what the town really wants to have? I haven't seen any surveys in the last, long time, refreshing and keeping our stuff up to date and making sure that we're offering things that are more appealing. Just because we offered them before and we had a good turnout, the community changes and the interest changes, like lacrosse or wrestling or other attractive events that would bring possible revenues to the town. I'm not seeing a flip or a change in anything like that. Is there any discussion in this new budget? Are you bringing in any new programs on that are a little bit more outside of the normal things that we're providing?
So the last time that we did a comprehensive community-wide survey was 2009.
Yeah.
And, from that, a master plan was developed, which included a lot of different things. we're getting close to the point where doing another comprehensive townwide survey needs to be done. We do survey program participants on a regular basis and take their feedback, and we're always looking, and we send out and we encourage people to give us suggestions for programs. So a lot of the programs are similar, but we're adding and dropping programs all the time based on, what we're seeing in registration.
Right, because one of the biggest discrepancies that I'm noticing is the lack of teen activities for like age 15 through 18, so they have something to do. We have a rec center now, and I know like rec basketball ended, but then they started, one of the coaches decided to bring it in a pickup pay to play. We need more programs like that where we're tapping in not just to the small children, but if you're gonna have an open rec center, we need an accessibility spot where teenagers that maybe do not make the high school team have a place where they can go after school and attend activities, pick up basketball, you have somebody there supervising. Things like that are open, a true community center outreach program that's hitting our hardest hit teens that have nowhere to go. That's what I'm hoping we're pushing for. That's why I was asking. Thank you.
Yes, and that is certainly our goal. And we have tried teen programming in the past, and it's a challenge to figure out exactly what they want to do, but that doesn't mean that we're going to give up. But I fully agree with what you're envisioning for the community center. We would like to expand hours. Right now, they're open pretty much just when the building monitors are there and programs are taking place. One of the goals is to move the administration portion. We're over in Spicer House now. We'd like to move to the community center, and having staff there from 6:30 in the morning until the evening would allow us to open up the building for additional uses, and that is our goal.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right, Representative Newsom?
Special events,
Thank you, Madam Moderator. 10648, park maintenance, about $20,000 increase. What are we doing differently this coming year that we're not doing right now for $20,000?
So there's a few things in there that we've proposed. About 2 years ago, we started working with a rather large group from the sub-base. They've done a couple of community projects with us. Those community projects usually take place on the weekend, and they require park staff to work overtime. And the scope of these projects generally require them to work a couple of weekends, so that's a portion of it. Another part is that includes last September or August, we started leasing a surf rake. We have a rather unique kind of seaweed that's washing up at Esquire Point Beach. The equipment that we were using previously, we weren't able to collect the seaweed. So we were actually bringing in a contractor who has what the piece of equipment is called a surf rake, and we were paying $1,800 every single time he came to clean up this rather unique seaweed. What makes it unique is it's not like eelgrass, so you can't just pick it up with a rake or anything. This surf rake has tines that rotate on a tread, and they actually pick this material up. Well, since we started leasing that, we've got payments to make over the next 3 years for that. Since we started using that, we've collected over 200 yards of this seaweed, and this seaweed actually stinks, and it drives people away from the beach. So included in here is half of this year's payment towards the surf rake, so that's $7,500. The other increase was for materials. We took over the field at what's now the community center a couple of years ago, that field needs a lot of work. We've been putting extra money in to seed and do other things to try to bring that field up to a better condition, because it's in not a great condition right now.
Thank you.
Representative Bordelon?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Sorry, one more thing under the rec account. I know that you guys came to the town council at that same meeting that was discussed, and I think I'm in the right section here. And if I'm wrong, let me know, Whitney. All right. The parade was talked about being shortened and condensed down to only service Pequannock Bridge. And I know we're going to be voting on that budget, and I want to make sure that that parade is going to stay the way that it was. Because I know that the talk at that meeting was to make it as happening as Mystic. And it was brought up that the reason that the Mystic Parade is like that, there's private entities bringing in and volunteering and helping fundraise and such. So I was just checking the status to see that where the parade is standing for the July.
Yeah, so currently the parade will remain as is. It will start at Sutton Park and Pequannock Plains, merge, and then head down Route 1 and culminate in the parking lot where Benny's used to be.
Okay, so there's no change to that. And are we working to do more outreach to make that, I mean, we want to have a happening parade, and there's ways that that can be done. Are we finding ways to support that and bring in those festivities to start a little sooner, getting people on that, contacting some of the people that are in the Mystic Parade? I mean, I think we can make that happen if we really invest the time.
Yes, we are doing that to make the 4th of July parade more of a community type event.
Yeah, and I have one more thing, and I apologize. Have we looked into any grants for swimming to help offset costs for, especially in urban areas? This is not as urban as some areas, but there's a movement to make sure that minority children or children of all different backgrounds that cannot afford and access swim lessons have availability to learn to swim and access to pools, considering that our schools do not have access to swimming and our rec center does not. Have we reached out and tried to make that a focus in this town?
Yeah, we actually have a really vibrant scholarship program, and I think last year we gave out $34,000 in scholarships. So anyone that comes to us and is in a position where they need some assistance, generally they get it. Yes, it's in every one of our brochures.
The swim, have you looked into any outreach for the swim for inner city urban areas, for low-income districts, that making sure you're advertising and hitting that population? There's a big movement for that right now, and it would be interesting to see us kind of join in on that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yes, we do have the scholarship information is in the brochure. It takes up a full page, and we've actually, there's been a number of iterations of that scholarship program, and we've made steps to make it easier each year, but we have not specifically targeted urban children in the swim program. Okay.
So, Mr. Berry, I'm just following up on Representative Newsom's questions on the surf rake. I'm just curious, I remember last year having a lot of testimony from folks who do beach volleyball and wanting to have a CIP, which I believe was about $30,000 for a rake a machine to clean up the seaweed, and I didn't think that was passed. Am I wrong? So we didn't purchase it, now we're renting it, is that it? Can you just explain? I remember them coming up and testifying, and I'm just curious. I didn't think that CIP went forward. So I'm just curious to see it in a line item. Right. Am I wrong?
Yeah.
Just confused.
So yes, we are leasing a surf rake right now, making payments towards purchasing it. It's a used one. A new one I think was 42, and this one I think was 30,000.
Why didn't it go in a CIP?
Well, we had the opportunity to start leasing it then. We did fundraising money, and we also used some of the money that we would have been paying the vendor at $1,800 a pop to come in. We used some of that money to put down the down payment, and then we have we have 2 years worth of payments for $15,000.
But since the CIP failed, I'm just curious where the money came if it wasn't in the budget.
I don't actually think it was in the CIP last year.
Oh, they were
I don't
just
think it-
testifying? Oh,
Yeah, I don't think it was.
I just remember their testimony. There were quite a few of them that came up. And
Right. Yeah, no, we didn't have that as a specific project.
Thank you.
Just to make people, we get a lot of complaints about the smell there. We
Yeah.
just met with a group of the neighbors the other, just what, 2 weeks ago? Yeah, it's terrible. We're trying to do whatever we can do to
Are you
help the area.
composting it up at the Scarrow place on Flanders Road?
No.
The permit that the town has doesn't allow for that, so we have reached out to, we've tried a number of other different options. We offered to give some to Grasso Tech, and they took it last year. They can't take it this year because of what's taking place up there. They use it as part of their agricultural program. We also brought some over to Stonington, to the community garden over there. They actually rejected it this year. Yeah, I mean, it's...
This is a
yeah.
good project for some student somewhere, I think.
Yeah, I mean, like I said earlier, we've collected over 200 yards of this. I mean, that's a really big pile of seaweed. And for places to be able to take that amount, right now we're actually trucking it up to Rhode Island. There's a compost facility up there. We would rather bring it local. We actually were bringing it to a farmer in North Stonington, but he's exceeded his capacity at this point. So, yeah, unfortunately, it's not going away. And, you know, you clean the beach one day, and it's sitting out in the water, high tide comes up, it goes back out, and it's right back on the beach. I mean, we could be doing it every single day, but we don't have the resources to do it every single day. So we're doing it as often as we can.
Thank you. Thank you for that long explanation that I asked for. Thank you. I appreciate it. Representative Bailey?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I have a question for Mark Berry. Do you see any more overtime? Like, is there any difference from past years or something like that? Is it increasing?
Yeah, it's an invasive species.
The only overtime that I see is affiliated with this group of gentlemen from the sub-base. They're doing community-based projects. We've got one planned for this year where there's a playground at Pleasant Valley School, which is now closed. It's worth about $85,000, and we are planning to disassemble it and reassemble it out behind the community center. And that's going to be probably a 2-weekend project, and that's why we increased the overtime so that our park staff could be there to provide assistance for this, the group of men from the sub-base.
And also, I have a question as far as increase in overtime or any differences. The seaweed, is that, have you ever seen any, like over the years or something like that?
Have seen an increase in the seaweed?
Yeah. Yes.
You know, this seaweed has been here for 4 or 5 years now, and some years it doesn't show up until August, and then it starts rolling in on a regular basis. Other years it is here much earlier. This particular year and this winter, it just kept rolling in every single day. So it's Mother Nature. It's difficult to predict, but there's a greater consistency of this seaweed.
So it's trending upward?
Yes, the seaweed is trending, yes.
Hey, thank you very much. Thank you,
Yeah.
Madam Moderator.
I believe it may be a new species of Cladophora, but I'm not sure. Representative Stevenson, did you have?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I'd just like to, more of a comment regarding that. So I know recently Connecticut and Rhode Island has been doing a lot of analysis with their shores and stuff like that. That might be something they've been looking into. I don't know if it's something you're aware of for the seaweed stuff, but yeah, I think there was a study that was done a few years back. A colleague of mine was talking about it. She was working for the state of Rhode Island. So I don't know the specifics of it, but that might be something to look into. I'm not sure what you can do about seaweed out there, obviously, in the sea, but if it is such a problem, we might want to do some research on it, that's all.
Yeah, we had a few. Thank you. Any other, I think we have a motion on the floor for $1,592,779 for account 1064, Parks and Rec. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? That motion carries 31 in favor. Thank you.
The next account is account 2010 Shennecossett Golf Course. That's on page 161. A motion was made for $1,235,000.
Can I just ask, is 3240 coming? Because 3240 is the next one on our agenda.
Oh, I'm sorry, it's all, yeah, we can do 3240 if you want. Sorry, it's all.
That might be nice just to keep them together, I think.
Yeah, okay, I apologize. So account number 3240, rec and senior activities. On page, I believe it's 64.
166.
Recreation and senior activities. A motion was made for $1,242,238. It was made by Representative Chase and seconded by Representative Melendez. Discussion was, Representative Chase asked what the fund balance was. Mr. Berry said we get that once a year sometime in July. The estimated fund balance right now is $388,961. Representative Chase asked if this is another self-sustained account. Mr. Berry said yes, the balance goes back into supplies. The 13.6% increase is paid for from fund balance. We are taking the money that we have earned from the program fees and putting them back into the programs, including curtains and a divider that will save on maintenance costs, and then they would like to purchase some commercial grade exercise equipment. Representative Starkley asked how you get people to know about the community center, and Mr. Berry said that one of the challenges is there's a sign on the building. They're looking to address that with the CIP under Public Works. They put things out on Facebook, it's in a brochure, and they're looking at putting a sign on Route 1. It's going to take some time with word of mouth, and the sign would come from Public Works. And Public Works can make speed limit signs, et cetera, so they're looking into that as well. Madam Moderator, I make a motion for, I'm sorry, there was 4 voted in favor, 0 opposed, and 0 abstaining for $1,242,238 for account number 3240.
All right, we have a motion on the floor for account 3240 for $1,242,238, made by Representative Mello Miller and seconded by Representative Powers, S. Powers. Is there any questions on this one? I know that Representative Newsom.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I'd like to ask the town manager quickly. So we talk about these programs being self-funding, but really the benefits that we pay to the park employees is in another fund, right?
Right.
The town is still paying those. So technically, all of these fees that we're bringing in, we're not completely self-funding
Right,
Parks and Rec employees,
they're
right?
still staff separate. This funds the actual programs, right?
I personally would like to see some of the money that we make by virtue of the fact that we have this activity. I'd like to see some of it personally go back to paying for some of the benefits for those staff. That would be truly self-sustaining, in my opinion. Thank you.
Did you want to make a motion?
No, ma'am. Just a comment.
Representative Whitney?
A couple questions, but about the benefits. In this budget, it's all part-time staff, I believe. Are there benefits associated with that? Part-time staff?
Not out of this budget, I don't believe.
Yeah. And then my other questions is in terms of the part-time personnel, seasonal personnel, how many people is that? This would be on page 168, 5102, and 5103. Just wanted some sense of how many people we're employing.
That changes seasonally. During the summer with our day camps, the number of employees rises considerably. And it also depends on the number of programs that we're running during the course of the year. So it's a moving target, but I would say well over 100.
Can you be more specific than that? I mean, you've planned a budget.
Oh, well, yeah, I could. So this is, let's see, we have an aquatics director, 2 lifeguards, 3 aquatics coordinators, 3 lifeguards
And these are part-time personnel, not the seasonal personnel? Because they're 2 different line items.
Well, yeah, this is both part-time and seasonal.
Oh, both
Are
of those
you referring
combined.
just to seasonal or for part-time?
You can do both separately. I think it'd be helpful to answer that now, but also in next year's budgets to put numbers of people with this. I know they're not full-time, but
Okay.
that'd be really helpful.
So seasonal employees, out of this 5103 account, there is, and these are mostly camp positions, there's about 60.
Thank you.
And the part-time personnel, I don't know, I guess I'd have to ask one of the program supervisors to come up. They might be able to better answer the exact number of.
So like the groundskeepers aren't seasonal then? They're more part-time?
The
Or-
groundskeepers are in 1064.
Okay, got it.
Mary Jo, can you come up?
I don't know.
The director was pretty close. I'll give him that. The actual number of people would be anywhere, I'd say, from a low of 140 to a high of about 175. So depending on how many hours a particular employee can work, it might fill with 1 position or 2, but generally speaking, seasonal and part-time staff combined, right around 150 people a year.
Okay, thank you. And are they getting raises? Like the full-time, I noticed is about between 4 and 6% raises, as much as I could tell. But are the part-time staff also seeing increases?
The part-time staff, we negotiate an agreement with them on what their hourly rate is going to be. And that's partly determined by what they are going to charge us for the independent contractors. So that, changes depending on the particular program. Instructors get paid differently for different programs that they're teaching. Go ahead.
So also the part-time seasonal pay plan.
Right.
There's an established pay plan established by the town council. Every year that a seasonal employee comes back for summer camp, for example, on their 2nd year they come back, they get a 50-cent raise. That pay plan is established, and it's something that we conform to. The director was also talking about how we pay instructors, which is a little bit different than like a camp staff member. But in a sense, yes, every time an employee comes back for another season or on their anniversary date, they do get a 50-cent step raise according to the part-time seasonal pay plan that's been adopted by the council.
Okay, thank you. Just have 2 other questions. One of them was, maybe you mentioned this already, Nancy, but 5,400 equipment machinery. What was the 40,000 for?
This is equipment and machinery. Oh, this is for a number of different items. So one was, there is a divider at the community center in the gym. It's kind of it's a paneled divider, and each year it requires maintenance. It's, I think, been there since the building was originally built. Each year it starts to sag, drags across the floor. We end up having to do work on the floor. So we're proposing, and this is coming out of fund balance, we're proposing to have that removed and put a screen that 1 person can operate. Right now it takes 2 people to do that. So that's part of the project, or part of that 40,000. Another part is we have some, we're looking to put in commercial-grade equipment, exercise equipment in the community center. Right now, we have a lot of donated equipment, and we constantly have people coming and saying, can't we get in there to use that equipment while my kid's doing karate or whatever? And because it's not commercial-grade equipment, we just don't feel comfortable having the public have access to that. So we're proposing to replace that. That's $20,000, and again, that's coming out of fund balance. We're also looking to replace a piece of equipment here at the senior center. We want to replace one piece of equipment that actually, replace two pieces of equipment with one, and that one piece of equipment will do both functions. So that's some more of that $40,000 that we're proposing to spend from that equipment account, $5,400.
Okay, thank you. And for next year's budget, like detail like that, it's actually helpful to have in the budget narrative too, especially when it's a large change from the year before. And I only have, so thank you for the information you gave. I only have one more comment, is that the fees for the recreation services, there's always a difference between in town and out of town. And it's really not that much of a difference. And every time I pay it, I think, well, you know, they're not paying any taxes to the town. But I don't know if you've looked at that, but it seems like there should be a bigger benefit for actually living in the town than not. Thank you.
Representative Gustafson?
Thank you. I just had a quick question. The 20 requests for senior programs looks like it's like about 77 more than the 19 estimate. You could just speak what that represents? It's on page 167.
Can you repeat it? I'm sorry, couldn't really
Yeah, the
hear you.
20 estimate is it's like 77 more than the 20 requests is like 77,000 more than a 19 estimate. I was just curious what was behind that. Is it more programs or?
Did you say for senior programs or?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. So 32405 is what you're asking?
Yeah.
So last year the adjusted was 232,989, and this year it's 278,815, and you're asking about that difference.
Correct.
Is that correct? Okay. So the difference in that is because of that particular cost center, that includes the equipment that I just talked about at the senior center. That's a small portion of it. That also includes instructor salaries. So if we're offering more programs, and I can give you one example specifically, the bridge program that we offer here. We have an instructor who has quite a following, and we've expanded the number of bridge classes that we offer. And so those fees for the instructor are included in here. That's just one example. There's others also. A big portion of that is, and again, this is coming out of fund balance, is we're interested in doing a community-wide survey for those 55 and over, looking at perceptions and barriers to participation here at the senior center. So essentially what we're focusing on is trying to get more people here at the senior center, targeting my age group, 55 to 70. I'm closer to 55, not 70. Targeting that age group. So that's that right there is $20,000. Again, that's coming out of fund balance. So that's why the increase in that particular cost center.
All right, thanks.
Representative Miller?
Mr. Berry, at the budget hearing for with town council, you also mentioned, and just correct me if I'm wrong, you talked about how the increase in operating is also due to a custodian that used to be with Public Works and is now in your budget. Is that correct?
The cleaning fees for the Esker Point Beach bath building is now the responsibility of Parks and Recreation. And that used to be under Public Works.
So that was also due. So how much did that increase your costs?
I think that's $2,500 for the summer.
So that's another reason that that's an increase.
Yeah, not for that particular cost center, but yes, that is an additional cost that we've incurred.
Okay,
That's
yeah,
correct.
no, I just wanted to double check on my notes. Thank you.
Representative Bordelon, do you have your hand up?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I know that things have always operated a certain way, but it doesn't necessarily mean they're always right. And I do find this rec account's quite confusing with the kids' camps, with the seniors. It would just, I don't know, it just seems like the camp stuff would go with rec. I don't know, just a little confusing. The building that you guys are taking on at the Esker Point, what are you guys using the building for, if not concession stand?
That's where the bathrooms are. So changing. There's also an external shower that people use.
And is there a reason we're not bringing in revenues at the concession stand and trying to make that profitable?
We had a concession there for a number of years. They've left. We haven't been able to fill.
Have we tried to fill it? Because I heard you guys are using that for storage now and such.
We have tried to fill it, and we've actually gone to a different format where vendors, we set up a program where vendors can come down for a particular event. Usually it lines up with the concerts, because that's when the greatest number of people are down there. And so we charge different food vendors to be there, to be able to provide food for the people that are coming to the concerts.
Yeah, because it just seems to me that as if we have a lot of concession stands that aren't fully functioning, Pequannock Plains, Esker Point, Sutton Park. I mean, I feel like we should be trying to generate some form of revenues. I'd like to see those used. My other question I have is in regards to the senior, a 13.6% increase is quite high. I'm in full support of Parks and Rec. I do feel some of the stuff is redundant. We went back and forth over the school budget of a 1.2% increase, which is a direct impact of our students in our district, and people seem to debate that for a long time. But then 13.6% on rec, which on this page, it's senior and camp, so I can't really say it's all senior. Is there, next year, are you planning to, I mean, I feel like other cost centers are having to take a hit. You have a fund balance that's quite high. It looks here that you're using $64,000. Is there any reason why we can't use a little bit more of that fund balance and bring some of this cost down to decrease that 13.6% increase? I'm just having a little trouble with that. I mean, I have to question it.
Sure.
13.6%, the police department wanted an increase,
Right.
1.2 to the school, so.
So this, just so that everybody's clear, this account that we're talking about has absolutely no impact to the mill rate. None at all.
Okay.
So it's already generating its own money from the program fees.
Okay.
Right, and that fund balance that we have, we're actually proposing to draw some of that down with some of the purchases that I just described, the exercise equipment, the divider in the gym.
Right.
All of those things are coming out of the fund balance.
I have trouble with it. I just think we should be using it a little bit more. Thank you.
Can you, following along Representative Whitney's question, I was just curious about some of the increases in operating expense center 5290, went up about 40 or so thousand, professional technical. And then the materials and supplies also went up about 20,000.
So the professional technical, the reason that went up is that particular account is the assessment that I talked about.
Yes.
The $20,000 the assessment of the barriers and the perceptions.
Okay, got it.
Yes.
I thought
Yeah.
so that's not coming out of equipment. The assessment comes out of there, and then the actual purchase of the equipment is in 5,400. Is that how it works?
Yes, the
Okay.
purchase of all the
Sorry.
equipment that I just described.
I thought it was all in 5,400 then.
No.
All right. Any other questions? We have a number on the floor, which is $1,242,238. And this is for account 3240, and this is the recreation and, senior activity fund. I'm on the wrong page. Sorry about that. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? That motion carries 31 in favor. I guess it's called Recreation and Senior Activities, sorry. All right, please continue, Representative Mello Miller. If you want to go to 2010, that's great.
Account number 2010, the Shennecossett Golf Course. A motion was made for $1,235,349. It was made by Representative Melendez and seconded by Representative Starkley. Representative Chase asked, where does the fund balance from the golf course go? Mr. Berry answered that the net revenue from the past year from membership, it comes from the net revenue from the past year of membership and greens fees. It's been slowly growing with a goal of 10% of the total budget of around $100,000. It was designed so that in a bad year, they will be able to use the fund balance. The golf course is in a special revenue fund. All of the fees pay for the entire operation of the golf course, including Social Security and unemployment. On top of that, the golf course pays back to the town $59,683 for services provided through human resources, finance, purchasing, etc. The operation side of the golf course has no impact on the general fund. Representative Chase asked about working with conjunction with the Hampton Inn and the Hilton and other hotels in the area, and Mr. Berry answered that it's already in place for deals with both hotels. They are targeting millennials, creating a new member, and also they are targeting millennials this year, creating a new membership class, Associate and Associate Plus, because of the barriers they were finding joining was the price. The price is working very well. They have 23, as of the committee meeting, they had 23 millennial memberships, and I'm assuming it's gone up. For regular memberships, it is $1,440, and the associate price, if you're 20 to 29, is only $860, and if you're 30 or 35, it's over $1,000, just over $1,000, and it's unrestricted golfing. 4 voted in favor, 0 opposed, and 0 abstaining. Madam Moderator, I make a motion for $1,235,349 for account number 2010.
We have a motion on the floor for account 2010, $1,235,349. That's the golf course fund, made by Representative Mello Miller, seconded by Representative Streeter. Is there any questions on this? Representative Stevenson.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Could someone, what's a green fee? Is that when someone who's not a member comes to golf? Is that what that number is?
That's correct, yes.
Okay. Great. That's all I wanted to clarify. Thanks. I don't know golf.
I think we all need a field trip. Representative Monahan?
I suppose I could have Googled this, but I assume a maintainer is something less than a groundskeeper. What does a maintainer do?
Yeah, so the maintainers, they're operating various pieces of equipment to keep the golf course, you know, take care of the bunkers, cut the grass, and things like that.
Any other questions? Representative Bordelon?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I happen to think the prices are pretty reasonable in comparison for the quality on, water views, what have you. Considering some of the travel ball teams in town are getting anywhere upwards of $1,200 to $1,600 to pay for only like a few months. So I understand we decrease the cost to attract the millennials. That's great, but then, I think for what you're getting, I think we could be losing money. My other recommendation, I feel there's not enough advertising for the golf course. I feel that there should be more on the highway, because some people happen to drive through and see the sign and say, oh, I didn't even know they had a golf course there if they're not familiar. So I think when we're doing our signage, I think we could also do better with advertising and trying to bring in more revenues and more assets, because it is an asset to the town, and I fully support the golf course. But I'd like to see it, bring in some more money and attract more members in some other ways. I think there's more we can do. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion on this? Representative Whitney?
Later, we're going to look at a CIP for redoing the bunkers, and it's roughly $50,000 for the next few years going forward. Could that be built into the maintenance here, or partially built in there?
we would like to be able to do that. We've tried to do that in the past. The golf course operates at a pretty close margin. Some years, in fact, one year, I think, at the end of the year, we had a net increase of $1,800. So, it's taken us a number of years to build up that fund balance, and to try to use some money from that fund balance if we had a really bad year, it would put us in a really bad spot, and we'd be coming back to the council and the RTM saying, we need X amount of dollars to pay the bills through the end of the year. So what historically we've done is come to the council and the RTM requesting for money for the capital improvements, as we'll be discussing a little bit later.
Any other questions? All right, seeing none, we have a number on the floor of $1,235,349 for, sorry about that, for account 2010, and that's the Shennecossett Golf Course. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? That motion passes, 30 in favor, 1 opposed, 1 abstention. Thank you.
Oh, no, I didn't see an abstention.
1 opposed, no abstentions.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, did you abstain?
No, Madam Moderator, I have a question about something else between going on to the going on to the next account, please.
Okay. Quickly.
I'll let this go by, and then if you can provide me a point to ask you a question.
You can ask it right now, quickly.
Okay, thank you very much. For the other account of 1064, could you pass me over or say the amount that was approved, please?
Yeah, the amount is approved is basically $1,592,779.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
Can you continue, Representative Mello Miller? Thanks.
Moving on to CIP number 4A, facility improvements. And that is on page 220. A motion was made for $90,000, made by Representative Chase and seconded by Representative Mello Miller. Discussion. Representative Chase asked that at the town council meeting, talking about reserving floor for the use of the classroom and what is the reconfiguring, what are you spending money on? And Mr. Berry responded that because it's a kitchen area, there are things that need to be done for safety reasons. There's an electrical box that needs to be removed, and there are things that need to be done to make it safe for storage. However, most of the money is going for ADA requirements. The doors need to be changed out, the urinals need to be changed. There's one exterior shower that isn't accessible for those in a wheelchair or walker, and it needs to be resurfaced. They do have a Moby mat that goes from the parking lot. I'm sorry, I apologize. And then we started talking about the beach and the rake that was in the previous account. So, Madam Moderator, I make a motion for $90,000 for CIP 4A.
Is there a second? Second. So we have a motion on the account for CIP 4A, facilities improvements, for $90,000 made by Representative Mello Miller and seconded by Representative Chase. Any questions or discussion on this?
I apologize, Madam Moderator. I thought this was not pertinent to the CIP. I apologize. Representative Chase did ask about the usage of the beach, and Mr. Berry responded there's a volleyball league that uses it for 5 nights a week. Tournaments are on the weekend. 3,000 people are using it on Thursday nights. There's a lease agreement for the surf rake that allows us a better job of cleaning the beach. It's quicker and allows a better beach experiment. And one of the things they did this winter was pushing sand through a filter to take out all the rocks. Their plan is to screen out all the tiny pebbles of sand, and this is one of the complaints of the beachcombers, is that the sand is really rough, and the picnic area is full of parties on the weekends, and it's the only free beach in town. And the machine that is screening the rocks is the one that Public Works had. The screens for sand were about $500 each, and they bought 2, and he didn't remember if it was the total was $500 or each screen was $500. And then I apologize, and then they started talking about the surf rake, so that was all I have. So I once
Thank
again
you.
make a motion for $90,000.
Yeah, we got that, thank you. Any other discussion, questions? Representative Stevenson?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. So this says here that this is being funded by LoSiP, is that correct? Are we not using general funds to pay for this year?
That's correct. The proposed funding for this is through LoSiP.
Okay, can you just explain what that is?
Basically, just a grant through the state that we can use for various projects. We're using LoSiP also for, the state tells us, I think, each year how much is available. And you put in for the projects. We're doing part of the community center renovations with LoSiP also. So it's just a state grant.
Right, so this isn't actually costing us anything?
Right.
This is just approving to spend money that we're getting from the state?
Correct.
Great, thanks.
Representative Bordelon?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Once again, I just want to repeat that if we're renovating that concession stand, putting it up to ADA standards, you're talking about 3,000 people there on a volleyball league night. I'm seeing revenues, and I'm seeing a facility that's not being used to its full potential.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Seeing none, we have $90,000 on the floor for CIP 4A facilities improvements. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? That motion carries. 31 in favor, none opposed, no abstentions.
All right, next up is CIP 4B, Trail Improvement Plan. A motion was made for $50,000 by Representative Mello Miller and seconded by Representative Chase. Representative Chase asked if Capital Reserve Fund is tax money. Mr. Berry said that's correct. This is to continue the Lily Lane bike path, and it has 3 different names that I'm sure Mark Berry can expand upon, or Mr. Berry can expand upon. It's behind the water plan to Mumford Cove. The goal is to continue the bike path to Industrial Drive, where the Amtrak service station is, down to Depot Road, down to Bluff Point, and they're continuing to extend the bike path. Representative Mello Miller commented that many people from out of town use these trails, and it's a good idea to attract more people to use the area. Mr. Berry responded that this is an east-west commuter route, which also will help EB. Also, Air National Guard by the airport would use the trails. It's a terrific project. Representative Melendez asked about building the bike lane along the road, and Mr. Berry responded that the road would be shared with cars and bikers. They would restripe the road. The engineers looked at different scenarios, and this is the least intrusive and least expensive. This would be a lot safer, it helps slow traffic down, and it makes it safer for drivers as well. Representative Starkley asked about if there were any zoning issues with Peconiac, and Mr. Berry responded that this particular area has been designated as a revitalization zone. So one of the goals is to increase pedestrian access and mobility. So it fits right into the plan. The planning department is aware, and it's working with Peconiac to make sure that there are no issues. Representative Chase asked if Mr. Berry was in talks with John Ryder about the bike path, and Mr. Berry responded that he had not talked about what they're attempting to do in that area. 3 voted in favor, 1 opposed, and 0 abstained. Madam Moderator, I make a motion for $50,000 for CIP 4B.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor for CIP 4B, Trail Improvement Program for $50,000, made by Representative Mello Miller and seconded by Representative Kay Powers. Is there any discussion on this? Representative Newsom.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I'd like to make a motion of 0, please.
We have a motion of 0 made by Representative Newsom and seconded by Representative Frickman. Would you like to speak to your motion?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Yes, we're making
An
improvements
amendment,
to the golf course. We're making improvements to parks all over town. We're making improvements to the beach. This just seemed like something that I felt like we could put off for 1 more year. Thank you.
Representative Frickman, did you want to? No, you had your hand up.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I second what Representative Newsom mentioned. I do have a quick question, though. In regards to the $35,000, the design for that trolley rail, is that discussion been made about what you're going to do with the trail? Are you going to pave it? Or is the plan to just do gravel?
No, that would be paved.
So-
There's an existing paved bike path that currently terminates in Knoxville Court. And the 50,000 that we're talking about would be to bring that out to Industrial Drive, a paved bike path out to Industrial Drive, and then along Industrial Drive down to Depot Road, that would be restriped with a designated bike lane.
So I guess my concern is we have a lot of asphalt and pavement in our town already. And we have all these beautiful trails, and to put asphalt and on our trails, I'm concerned with. So has it been discussed to actually use gravel like Haley Farm? Because those trails are great the way they are. They require less asphalt.
Yeah, there's a lot more maintenance with.
I don't mind the maintenance, but.
Oh, okay. Yeah, there's more maintenance involved with a gravel or a stone dust type path.
I guess for me, it's like I'm less concerned about necessarily the maintenance. I'll pay extra. I don't mind the money. It's just the idea of putting more asphalt in our woods and trails.
Yeah.
Sure.
So, which is why I'm supporting the 0.
Thank you. I have to say, I was really shocked when I hiked there and saw it had been paved and would.
I was too, actually.
Killed me. Representative Merritt?
I do believe a little bit of background on this project should come forward. The fact that the original trail led from Knoxville Court down towards Mumford Cove and Noank, and it was dirt, and it was requested by the citizens to be paved so they could push baby strollers, et cetera, on that. And as far as Industrial Drive goes, that's only paved adequately halfway down, and I don't know where you're going from Industrial Drive to Knoxville Court unless you're going through that buffer zone. Is that where it's going?
Yes, that would be the plan.
Who owns that property, and are we going to pay for easement on that?
I believe the Shipmans own that. And yes, that would be part of this $50,000 would be for an easement.
What about the back end of, I guess this is for the town manager, the second half of Industrial Drive? What's the plans for that? It's in pretty sad shape.
I'd have to talk to Gary to see where it's on the list. It's not, I don't believe it's currently on the list. We're going to have that updated study done. We'll see where it ranks out.
But we'd have to go through from Knoxville over to how wouldn't have anything to do with Ivy Court. That's right in the same area.
Yeah, it would go from the Knoxville Court over to Industrial Drive. It would go in that.
That goes through some people's property somewheres in there, and there's utilities in there also.
The area that's been scoped out, you know, those issues would, the area that was selected, those, because we're trying to avoid any of those issues. So it's, the desired location took into account those things, and I think that's why they have lined it up the way it is.
Can you just turn your microphone so it's not up? Thank you. Representative Powers?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Mr. Barry, just a quick question. We started in 2004 with this project. You know, do we have any idea how far along we are with connecting everything?
I can tell you that this particular section has been pushed out a few years now.
Right.
So I can't say
exactly where we are in that development of these paths,
right.
Connecting the towns together, correct?
Yes.
Okay, but we're behind on them.
Seeing how the study was done in 2004.
Right.
And it's, yeah, it's been kicked down the road a number of times. And yes, I would say that, yes, we are behind. I think in what the vision, what the community in 2004 had for a vision for this, I would say that looking back, they would be surprised to see how little has been accomplished.
Well, I do a bunch of biking, and I know a lot of the trails, and I do know that interconnecting the towns, I don't know how many people are familiar with different towns and how the bike paths actually work to get commuters off the road. People are able to travel at a whole different way through the past that we create from town to town to town without ever getting on a bus or without ever dealing with traffic. And would you say that there's safer ways to travel than being on the side of the road with all the traffic, correct?
Oh, there definitely are, but there's, you know, in some places, there's just physical limitations to not being able to keep a bike off the road. I mean, in some places, it just has to be.
Yeah, no, I ride on the road all the time. So
Yeah.
I agree that these paths are nice cut-throughs and ways to get around the traffic. It's much easier. It's safer for children, which is my big concern, you know, having them ride around on their bikes. And I see them without helmets and things like that. But if they're off the road, they're in a much safer environment. So I'll support the 50,000. Thank you.
I just wanted to note that I think that the trails exist, so people can, I've ridden my bike there many times. How much cheaper is stone dust? I mean, I thought the hard packed stone dust was fine. I understand there's maintenance issues, but how much, what's the differential cost on blacktop, which is an impervious surface and increases runoff, versus just a pervious stone dust cover, which is fine for biking as far as I'm concerned?
Yeah, that, I don't have the expertise to answer that question.
No.
That would be a Gary Snyder, or the town engineer could best answer that question.
How much was paid on maintenance of the stone dust trail there at Lily? How much was it costing per year?
That's, again, out of my purview. I'm not sure how much money was being spent. And I know was paved a number of years ago.
Yeah, not that long ago. Representative McDermott?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. This is part of an overall plan. It's been talked about and massaged for years. I really don't think that we should short-circuit this thing at this point in time. We need to get it going so that we can complete this whole plan. So I am not in favor of zero on this account.
Thank you. Representative Richards?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I just wanted to ask, because I'm not as familiar with the particular area where this trail is in, what are the goals of this segment of it? Like, what is it trying to connect? What are the benefits of this part? What will this contribute to the movement for bikes?
This is kind of just one more step. Right now, the trail comes out of Haley Farm and goes into the Knoxville Court area and terminates there. So we would like to continue that down to Depot Road. And we had a consultant come in 2 years ago and look at continuing a bike path from Depot Road out to Route 1, taking a left, going across the bridge, and then taking another left and going on to South Road. And then taking that all the way out past the airport onto Thomas Drive, which was restriped last year. This is one piece of a bigger plan that was identified in 2004, and that was an east-west corridor that would connect the city to the town and provide a way for people to commute back and forth. So this is a small step towards a bigger goal.
Okay, thank you.
Representative Whitney?
Thank you. I fully support at least the 15,000 for the connection from Knoxville Court to Industrial Drive and then to Depot Road. I do know that people do use that as a commute route all the way into Groton City, and that connection avoids a longer path, a more circuitous path through Pequannock Bridge. Along with that, it's a better connection from Pequannock Bridge neighborhood to Bluff Point. And I fully support that access, and it makes a lot of sense, not just for commuting, of course, but for recreation connections to get in there. But then I do have questions about the 35,000, because in one part it says it's for design and permit for a bike path from Tri-Trail up to Fitch High School. But then I see in the chart that 35,000 appears in construction and not planning and engineering. So I'm having trouble putting those two together. And then my other question, I just want to clarify, I know you're talking about paving the part, that short part between Knoxville and Industrial Drive, but are you talking about eventually paving the part towards Fitch too?
No, I believe most of the proposed trails that head up towards Fitch would be on-road, and it would just be restriping.
So there's 35,000 in the table, item C for construction. But when you read the narrative program for FYE 21, our funds 35,000 to design and permit a bike path. So that doesn't seem like construction to me. I'm missing something.
That's for the
Yeah,
next year.
that's two different ones. That's in another year.
Okay.
And there's actually.
Okay, yeah.
Representative Mellon Miller?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. You answered part of my question already, which was what was the vision in 2004? So it was to connect city to town?
That's correct, yes. It was identified as an east-west corridor, and the goal was to connect residential areas to larger businesses, Pfizer and EB.
And it's being put in what's considered a revitalization zone, is what we talked about during the Parks and Recreation Committee. Can you talk about a little bit about what's a revitalization zone? I believe it was am I using the right term, revitalization zone? Can you?
It is, yes. So there's a section in Pequannock Bridge that was identified as a revitalization zone a number of years ago. And the goal is to, well, there's a number of different goals. And this particular project involves, addresses the issue of improving pedestrian mobility and access in that area. And there's a number of other components of the revitalization zone that I'm not sure that putting in this trail particularly address, but.
And is this going to attract, I understand you want to attract commuters, is this going to attract people from elsewhere? I'm sure you've heard of the bike trail that they're trying to do all down north-south of the coast, from Florida up to Maine. They're trying to create a bike the Greenway, the East Coast Greenway or whatever it's called. So and I know more towns are kind of moving over to this. So are you expecting this to attract people to the town as well to go on this trail?
Across the country, when communities do community surveys, one of the #1 items that comes up that residents want is more bike paths and connectivity to paths. And that came up earlier tonight. I mentioned the 2009 master plan study that was done. And that also, one of the questions asked was, what recreational facilities would you like to see? And that, connectivity to parks and bike paths was one of the highest scoring projects. So it improves livability within a community for those that are already here, and provides an opportunity for those visiting. I think I've heard that there's over 200,000 visitors that go to Bluff Point every year. So having Bluff Point and bike paths that kind of spider out from that is, for those that bike and walk and have kids, I would think that would be something that would increase their interest in coming to Groton.
Well, and I have to say, as a runner, I appreciate it as well. And I have to call out Representative Rogers. We were running from Haley Farm to Bluff Point a couple of years ago, and Representative Rogers twisted her ankle on all the gravel and the dirt. And we note how much safer it is. And I apologize, Representative Rogers, but it was because of the dirt and the rocks and stuff. And so when you are running on asphalt, it is harder on your knees, but it is a smoother run. And you are attracting, there's a number of, from what I know, a number of runners that train for ultra marathons distance, and they just do loops at Bluff Point. And this also attracts runners that are training for those farther distances to those trails, often from out of the area. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Representative Chase?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Do you have a mechanism in place to determine the usage of these trails, paths?
We currently do not. There are trail counters that are available, and I know some departments use those. We do not have one of those.
So
we're
is there
not.
any ballpark idea of how much they're used? Would anybody know that?
I don't.
Okay. So, in the description, it says for construction of approximately 100. What exactly is construction? Is it wooded and you can't get through, or?
Yeah. So a construction would include preparing the base before you put the pavement down. So, in order for the pavement to hold up, there has to be a base that's done.
So is there a trail through there now? It's just not paved?
Yeah, there might be where people are walking through, but it's not paved now.
It's stone.
And it's not a wide path. It's just, if people come to the end and if they know the area, they cut through, and we're proposing to have an actual designated bike path.
So it's used now?
I'm sure that some people are mountain biking. When they get to the end, they got a couple of choices. They can either turn back and go up to Haley Farm and then back into Bluff Point where they've already been, or they, choose to go around through the neighborhood and make their way back to Depot Road, or some are probably riding or running from where the bike path currently ends over to Industrial Drive.
So what would change if zero was voted in as opposed to 50,000 was voted in? What would change with the usage of that particular area?
Well, I think if the vote was to not fund this, I guess people would continue to either ride through the neighborhood to get over to Depot Road, ride through the woods to get to Industrial Drive, or head back to Haley Farm and then connect to Bluff Point and get back that way.
Okay, thank you.
Representative Whitehouse?
So from the conversation, it sounds like this is something that a lot of people in town are interested in or asking for. Would that be accurate to your perception?
Yes, based on the 2004 study and the 2009 study, that's an accurate statement.
And one of the concerns is that we'd be adding pavement to the road. We're talking about 135 linear feet. How wide would this path be?
I believe bike paths are 10 to 12 feet wide, and that's so that somebody in a stroller going one way could safely pass somebody going in a bike the other way, so that they're not squeezed together to, there's less chance of any type of accident.
So this is about as much asphalt as a long driveway.
Yes.
A long driveway now.
Yes, a long driveway.
But certainly less than would go in with an average subdivision getting built or
yes,
anything like that.
That's correct.
And I haven't heard anyone objecting to the asphalt being built for any subdivisions or EB upgrade, EB building new buildings or anything like that. And I haven't done a lot of biking myself recently, but I know one of the challenges with anything that isn't asphalt is it becomes weather dependent. That if it's gravel or whatever, it gets wet, it gets sloppy. And some people who commute by bike, they commute every day by bike unless it's a thunderstorm or a snowstorm. I know because I used to commute to high school on a bike in all weather. And so I think for a lot of people like that, if it's not paved properly, then it could create a safety issue for them, or just discourage them from biking, put them back in their cars, which defeats the purpose of a bike trail. And this, voting zero for this seems like one of those things that when people out in the town say, why can't we get anything done? We've been working on this for 15 years, what's happening? It's because in a meeting like this, we decided to try to save $50,000, which will bring the mill rate down by 0.00, roughly, and save approximately no dollars off the average taxpayer's bill. 41,000 people in town, $50,000 it's about $1.03 per person. So it seems like it's a good expenditure of a relatively small amount of money for something that a lot of people in town want, that improves bike traffic through the neighborhoods, which is a place where people see each other and see their neighbors, which is a positive thing, keeps people off the roads, and generally seems like a fairly good use of our money. So I'll be supporting the 50,000 figure. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Stevenson?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. So my question was kind of already answered by Representative Chase, asking about the numbers. Because you described this as a commuter trail, and I was just trying to get an understanding of what we could see by taking those bikes off the roads. Accidents and just overall decrease in traffic, but it sounds like we don't have those kinds of numbers, so. Is that correct?
Yeah, I don't have any numbers on the number of people using that particular trail.
Right. But it seems like something that, again, just for safety reasons, they found that adding bike paths on roads that have vehicles, unless there's a physical barrier between them, there's not a whole lot of improvement of safety. So I think by adding this trail and adding more connectivity, I know we're talking about adding lines to another part, but I'm just saying any reduction of what we can do for that helps. And just wear and tear on the roads. If we have people choosing to bike, and not to get into, of course, the carbon emissions associated with taking that many cars off the road, every day during the summer. So I think this is a worthy investment. Thanks.
Representative Bailey?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I think 0 is a reasonable number, only as to, instead of like trying to actually literally blaze a trail, incremental improvements with CIPs, and we do have a lot of CIPs. I think it's reasonable to stagger these things towards the future, and it gives people something to look forward to as a change, because once everything's done, what are we going to do? And that's what, I guess that's what tomorrow's always for, and it's something to look forward to, and that's all I got to say. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you. Representative Bordelon?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I just see this as like a TIF kind of thing. It's an economic development. I think we keep saying we want to attract all these people from EB. We'll give them the commuter trail, give them accessibility, recreation. As far as the surface, what are other towns and other trails that are connecting? What seems to be the census of what they're using? I guess that would be something to have information on to see what the desired trail, should be. I feel like this is important. I think it does connect, people and give them the things that they want. You did say we are behind. In reference to where we're at, if we approve this, when would this start, this section of the 50,000?
That would depend on probably the engineering department of Public Works, and there'd be a negotiating process with a particular landowner.
Yeah. Maybe I'm sure.
I don't want to throw I don't want to throw a time out there.
Yeah. Do you write these CIPs? You don't write this. This is not your.
I did not come up with these figures.
Right. Yeah, and I think in future, just for full transparency and discussion on CIPs, I think the person who writes it, I think Gary Schneider, should be in attendance to fully discuss the surface pavement structure plans, where he's at on this particular plan. So I think in Mark Berry's defense, there's only so much he can answer, and I think that our public works should be in attendance next year. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Casper?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I am familiar with the trail to trails, or tracks to trails up in Simsbury, which goes from, I guess it goes all the way up to Massachusetts now and down to Farmington and beyond, and that is paved. And I used to rollerblade on it too.
Mr. Burt?
Just to mention, we're talking with a lot of developers about our different school projects, and a common theme is the millennials are all about amenities That's what they care very much most about, to draw people here. And a paved trail does get a lot more use than a gravel trail.
I just want to note that I'm calling on people who haven't spoken first. People who have spoken at least once, we'll wait until everyone who wants to speak for their first time. So Representative Casper, Representative Streeter.
Thank you. I guess we could have walked the trail since we started talking about this, so I'm going to move the question, please.
What did he say?
Move the question.
Move the question. We have a motion on the floor, sorry. It's not debatable, and it takes 2/3 majority. Do you want to do a roll call?
No.
All in favor, please say aye, and this is ending discussion on this. Aye. Any opposed?
Evans, Chase, Whitney, Gutowski. Oh, and Bordelon.
Did you get Frickman?
Yep.
All,
Go.
any abstentions?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 5, 6. Evans. Oh, no, thank you. 6 opposed.
So 25. So that motion passes, 25 in favor, 6 opposed, no abstentions. We have a motion on the floor for 0 for CIP 4B, and this is the Trail Improvement Program. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Actually, raise your hand. What?
In favor of 0.
Favor of 0. Sorry.
Please raise your hand.
Oh, boy. Okay. Evans, Frickman, Siller, Fleming, Bailey. Adams, Newsom, Chase, Gutowski.
What? 8 in favor, all opposed, please raise your hand. Okay, any abstentions?
23 opposed, no abstentions.
Is it 22? 23? 8 in favor, 23 opposed, no abstentions, that motion fails. We have another motion on the floor, it's for $50,000 for CIP 4B, Trail Improvement. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Six. So that motion carries, 25 in favor, 6 opposed. Any abstentions? 25 in favor, 6 opposed, no abstentions. Thank you. Go, you can continue, thank you.
All right, moving right along to CIP 4C, the Golf Course Improvement Plan. 222. A motion was made for $50,000, made by Representative Chase and seconded by Representative Melendez. Discussion. And actually, at this point, I'd also like to call Mr. Morrison, who's from the golf course, for the CIP for discussion. Mr. Morrison discussed that the bunkers on the course are upwards of 100 years old. They do not have drainage. The sand quality is low. The sand splash goes in the direction of where the shots of where the turf goes, so it's harder to get out of the sand trap. This will increase pace of play, and this will increase the quality of drainage. The $50,000 will cover 4 bunkers, and it'll finish this section of the golf course. A bunker is another name for a sand trap or a sand pit. Representative Chase asked, what do you have to do to make it drain? Mr. Morrison answered that you have to excavate the old material and redo the trap. It should be 3 feet lower than it is now. You can see the original soil line, and all of the sand has built up over the years. It changes the characteristic of how it's meant to be played, and after they excavate, then they put in the drainage. Representative Miller asked, how often should bunkers be replaced? Mr. Morrison responded that the course was built in 1916. These should be replaced every 20 years. Some of the bunkers have never been replaced. Mr. Berry added that pace of play is another barrier for millennials and others not playing golf. This is one thing to attract more millennials. By making it easier, it doesn't take as long to play a round of golf. 5 years ago, they surveyed golfers asking to identify what they liked and didn't like about the course. One of the sections asked about bunkers, and the bunkers scored the lowest of all on all satisfaction for golfers. Representative Chase asked why fees couldn't pay for this. Mr. Berry responded that they do not net enough money through their operations to pay for it. They have tried in the past. Mr. Morrison added that he's been here 19 years, and it was a negative fund balance when he got there. It takes a long time to build up. The current fund balance is $130,000 or $140,000, and their goal is to keep the balance at that level. They have lost days or 2 days every weekend because of the weather, and it's affecting the profits. Mr. Berry responded that the fund balance is not just additional revenue. The golf course used to contribute to the fleet fund at 100%, but it was being used to go to other vehicles. The money being used to the fleet fund is now going to fund balance. It is now commingled with the fleet fund. We have had an asset replacement plan for the golf course. There are $60,000 rough mowers, and if they were to try to pay for a CIP project through the fund balance, they would have to stop buying equipment or stop making improvements to the golf course. They're operating on a pretty narrow margin, and to pay for these projects, it would sink the golf course. Representative Chase asked how many bunkers are on the golf course, and Mr. Morrison responded that there's 100 of them. They have replaced 20, so about 1/5. He's targeting around green sites instead of the fairway bunkers. Representative Miller asked if the goal is to fix all of them, and Mr. Morrison responded that is the goal. Representative Starkley asked if the goal is to turn golfers faster. Mr. Morrison responded, this is the plan. This is going to spread among golfers that the bunkers are improved, so the word is going to spread. Golfers will want to come. If golfers see that they're making improvements, they will continue to come. Representative Chase asked if in an ideal world will this increase membership. Mr. Morrison responded that the goal is to become self-sustaining through memberships. One factor that controls golf course revenue is weather. The budget is also saddled with health insurance, union, and employee benefits. Mr. Locken added that the golf course is 128 acres. There are no shacks next to the golf course. The land is highly desirable, and the economic impact is helping because of the golf course. They need to make sure that the golf course is somewhere that people want to go. This brings in 35,000 rounds of golf a year. This is an asset to the town. And Mr. Berry added that on average, people spend cumulatively $400,000 coming into the town of Groton, and people travel from all over to use this golf course. 4 voted in favor, 0 opposed, and 0 abstained. Madam Moderator, I move $50,000 for CIP 4C.
So we have a motion on the floor for CIP 4C Golf Course Improvement Plan for $50,000, made by Representative Mello Miller and seconded by S. Powers. Do we have any discussion? Representative Stevenson?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Just to clarify, so there was a few numbers thrown around. Some of these bunkers were built 100 years ago. They don't have proper drainage. And then also the conversation that these should be replaced every 20 years. Are we looking at 50,000 every 20 years, or would that be a lesser amount once we make these drainage improvements?
I would say, as the plan that we have done, instead of asking for a big chunk of money, is we've asked for 50,000 each year to kind of just spread it out and keep the project going. I would say the 20-year number is basically an industry standard. Obviously, we've had some that have gone 100 years. They're not in the best of shape. We do what we can with what we're given to make them as playable as possible, adding sand, taking rocks out, edging, stuff like that. So 20 years, if we were, obviously some of them were done 5, 8 years ago maybe, so I don't think we'll be in the situation to be replacing those in another 13 years. We'll just try to keep them the best we can and go from there.
I see.
Obviously, if we were to make improving the fund balance and really banking some money, then we might look to do more than $50,000 a year.
Right, that was my second question. We had, I believe it was another CIP earlier that we zeroed out the balance for because it turned out we didn't actually have the available workers to do it. Is this something that we have the resources for? We can, if this money is allocated, it will definitely get done and all that?
Yes, because we hire a contractor to do this work.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Representative Whitney?
So at 50,000 times 18, that's $900,000 and spread out roughly over 18 years. And if there's a 20-year lifetime, then this is sort of an operation fee going forward, like $50,000 a year, because once the last one's fixed, then by this schedule, we'd be going back to the next one. So if it's really going to be like that, I think it should be built into the fee structure of Shennecossett. But on the other hand, if it's something that can last longer, say 40 years, then I would say this would be a great opportunity for fundraising. I know on a smaller scale, for instance, some park and rec projects like the docks have been partially or fully supported by fundraising. And maybe golfers aren't that interested in improving their bunkers. They might want to eliminate them. But I think it would be good to explore fundraising. I was wondering if you've looked at that avenue at all.
Thank you. Any other discussion?
That's a question.
That's a question?
Oh,
Explore fundraising?
would you like to answer that, Mr. Barry, or no?
You know, we're certainly open to, you know, any type of funding, fundraising for bunkers. We could certainly look into that. I'm not aware of any grants that might be available, you know, for this type of work. So I think if we relied on fundraising, I think we would find that, you know, we wouldn't be able to keep moving forward with these on a regular basis. I think we'd find that we would be falling further and further behind. But that's not to say that we couldn't maybe do some fundraising to offset some of the costs associated with the ongoing plan to replace the bunkers.
Thank you. Would the manager, Mr. Morrison, would you like to add to that, or no? No.
No.
That's fine. Just giving you an opportunity. Anyone else? Representative Bordelon?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. So at this rate, it looks like there's 80 that need to be done. This would bring it down to 76 if we did the 4. I agree with Whitney. I think it should be part of incorporated. You know, it's going to be a maintenance. It seems as if, I mean, we've been pretty slow here on the draw, and I'm in support of enhancing and improving the golf course, but I also still think that maybe our rates are off. I mean, we should be able to, we have to be able to charge a fee and maintain the field, you know. So I'm concerned that the rates are a little bit low than they should be for membership, in reference to being able to maintain something like this and incorporate the cost. Like I said, $1,600 to pay on a travel league for baseball for young kids. I think that's a steal what we charge people to play at Shennecossett Golf Course based on the assets and just the location. So I'm not sure how we can incorporate that, but I mean, at this rate, only doing 4 bunkers, we're going to be at this a lifetime. I wonder if I'll be able to see the end of this. I mean, and we'll be back to the start all over again. Is there any way also, I know it's a specialty and I'm not a golfer, so it seems as if you have to contract out and there's nobody in-house that's trained to be part of the staffing that also has some maintenance abilities. I'm assuming not.
We don't have the capability to do a complete renovation of a bunker. We've done some in-house edging, lowering of lips. We haven't done any drainage work in them, but we don't have the equipment to do shaping. And you really want a professional shaper to be shaping your sand traps. We've hired someone, we work with a golf course architect as well. He does the design. And you want consistency throughout. The course is a Donald Ross course, so these people are trained in designing bunkers in his style so they fit into the golf course and they don't stand out like a sore thumb.
Thank you.
And just, you've brought up pricing a couple of times, and we don't operate in a void. There are other golf courses in the area, so we're competing for players to come to our course, so we can't just set a rate to cover all of the costs, because we'd end up pricing ourselves out of the market. When we set our fees, we look at what other courses are charging and set our fees based on, well, not only what our expenses are, but what other courses are charging in the area. Because if we get too far out of line, they're just simply not going to play, at Shennecossett. They're going to go and play someplace else.
Mr. Burt, would you like to respond to that?
We have a lot of discussion on these same topics internally as we go through the budget. And honestly, there's likely going to come a time that we have to move some of this into the general fund. You talk about building this in, well, it'll probably be a general fund item for this. We'll just create a maintenance, line item for bunkers for $50,000 a year. That's probably what we'd be looking at. Because where I came from last, we were the golf mecca. We had 17 golf courses. I've worked with a lot of golf course owners, and price point's a huge deal. You don't want to start getting out of the ballpark of the others. You're just going to ruin your golf course. You're not going to get the same amount of revenue.
Thank you. Representative Casper?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I just want to attest that I'm with a group, and every Monday we play a different course between Eastern Connecticut and Rhode Island. I think this Monday I'm running the group, and we're going to Exeter. And the prices at Shennecossett are comparable with all the others in the neighborhood. And especially with Norwich, I guess that's one of your main competitors in Connecticut, the public course there.
Thank you. Representative Chase?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I can only relate to mini golf here, so I'd much rather play on a course that those greens are nice and flat and even. So in your opinion, are these bunkers keeping players away?
I wouldn't say they're keeping people away, but they definitely slow up the pace of play, which is a huge component for people who golf nowadays. They don't want to be out there for 5.5 hours for a round of golf. The quality of the sand is very poor in them. There's a lot of rocks, which damages their clubs. They don't like that. So really, these bunkers we're targeting the green side ones first. We deem those as the most important. They get hit into most often. So if the ones that we redo and the lips are lower and the sand is nice and they're not a pond when it rains, like some of them are still full of water now, and we haven't been able to rake them for 3 months, they appreciate those course conditions, and that's what keeps them coming back.
Well, you had mentioned, or one of you had mentioned earlier, that word of mouth gets around and on the conditions of the course, so I didn't know if it was keeping people away.
Well, yeah, the word of mouth is really good. If they see that we're constantly trying to give them a better product, then they're going to tell their friends, and eventually just more people are going to come and play.
Thank you.
Seeing no more hands raised, we have, Representative Stevenson, sorry.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I just wanted to clarify, will this impact play when they're doing this work? Is this at night? How does this work out, actually?
No, when we do a project, usually it's in the fall, and then we'll create a temporary green in front of the work site, so play will continue.
Excellent. Thank you.
All right, we have $50,000 for CIP 4C Golf Course Improvement Plan on the floor. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Whitney and Tatowski. I'm going to tell someone about that one. So that motion passes. Any abstentions? 29 in favor, 2 opposed, no abstentions. Thank you very much. Next item is, oh, let's take a quick break. Let's reconvene at 9:15, okay? Thank you.
4E, right, park improvement and ADA compliance. This is on page 223.
In the big book.
There was a motion for $48,000 made by Representative Melendez and seconded by Representative Chase. Discussion. Mr. Berry outlined 3 projects. 1, the rink outside the senior center. A number of programs use this. Roller hockey, there's 30 kids programs. Deck players, cumulatively 3,400 individuals a year use the rink. The surface needs to be smoothed, repainted. The posts that hold the border, they have lifted and they need to be redone. It needs to be repainted, which we already said, and it was last done in 2011. It originated in 2009. It was donated by Connecticut College, Conn College. Representative Miller asked if the senior center can pay with special revenue. Mr. Berry responded that they are proposing $5,000 from program fees to help pay for this. The second project was repairs for Tanglewood Park, the basketball park off of Seneca Drive. There are cracks all over the park. It could be replaced for $25,000. It can be patched for $18,000 for what they can repair. To repair it, the cracks have to be cleaned out, then they have to put a sealant, then an adhesive, then a mesh, then a couple of layers of paint to make a smooth surface. It is not like caulking your driveway. This is a safety issue. They are asking to fix what they've got. For $25,000, Public Works could have taken the pavement out and redone it, but it has never been patched or fixed. And the third project is Deerfield Park. $10,000 is less. Deerfield Park, $10,000 is less money. It's not as bad. They're asking $10,000 for Deerfield Park. It's less money because it's not as bad as the basketball court on Seneca Drive. They are trying to get ahead of the one at Deerfield Park so it doesn't get as bad as the one at Tanglewood Park. Representative Melendez read a letter by a concerned citizen, and Mr. Berry said he had been in contact with the resident. And Representative Melendez asked about chain nets versus nylon for the basketball courts, and Mr. Locken responded that they are a safety hazard and your fingers can get caught, so that's why they have to use the nylon. There was 4 voted in favor, 0 opposed, and 0 abstaining. Madam Moderator, I make a motion for $48,000 for CIP number 4E.
Stanford. Thank you. So we have a motion on the floor for $48,000 for CIP 4E Park Improvement / ADA Compliance, made by Representative Mello Miller and seconded by Representative Stanford. Is there any discussion on this item? Representative Merritt?
Yes, in reference to Tanglewood Park, and I know that's fairly old, how far down the road are we looking before it has to be replaced as it should be, instead of just sealing the cracks?
That had been my original proposal, probably starting 3 or 4 years ago, and each year it got cut. So I said, okay, if we're not going to replace it, then we'll repair it. And the repair cost came in at $18,000. So I don't know what the life expectancy of the court would be after it's
So
repaired.
for the sake of $7,000, we're just moving this whole project down the road?
Yeah, I mean,
Which it won't wind up being $7,000 next year or 2 years from now. It could be more.
It will likely be more, right? That is correct.
Is there any way we can to the town manager, is there any way we can reinstall the original intent?
Well, he didn't introduce that original intent to me. However, some other projects have been cut back, so we'd be within the total. It could be increased, I believe.
We're not allowed to go above your number, so we
For
can't.
individual ones, it's not a total?
It's 48,000.
I guess not.
So we can't go above the
We can't add to
48.
that.
Sad that we got to this point.
Representative Stevenson?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I'm not sure if this is a question of procedure, but could we specify, and I apologize for doing this, but the $10,000 to the one court, to allocate 7,000 of that 10,000 to go towards just replacing the other one? Is there anything that we can do like that, or?
So, so cumulatively, it would still come in at the 48, or right around 48,000, but essentially it would be dropping the Deerfield portion of the project.
Yes, which would
in order to cover the additional costs.
Yes, which I assume would mean reducing the 48,000 to 45,000, cutting the $3,000 remaining between the 7,000 you need to reallocate to get up to 25,000.
Yeah, we can't really make the kind of
Right.
manipulations below the belt, so, as it were, but, you know, you can, certainly people can make their ideas known on that.
I'd like to move a number for 45,000.
Second.
This would be to.
So let me
Oh.
open it up. So we have a number on the floor, $45,000. It's an amendment, rather, made by Representative Stevenson and seconded by Representative Bailey. You can speak to your motion.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Would be to allocate $25,000 to completely replace the one basketball court, and then hopefully next year the increase of 10,000 wouldn't be too much more to replace to repair the one in Deerfield Park. But I think it would be foolish to not spend the extra money now to replace the court when we could probably just be spending more than $7,000 in the future. So, we'll reevaluate Deerfield in the future, but I think we should focus for now on Tanglewood.
Thank you. Representative Whitney?
I don't support that cut for the reasons that were given, because Deerfield Park is in need of repair. It's used by hundreds of kids. It's in a very large neighborhood. I'm in that neighborhood. Another representative is as well. And the reasons stated by the letter that was read at the committee meeting are apt. I'm wondering, though, one question I have is, for these patches, what is the anticipated lifetime of the patch? That's one question. But then another one is, it does sound like it's a better idea to fully replace the one on Seneca Drive if it's really that far gone and it's only that much different. But could we, take on a CIP or additional funding for this in the next budget year? I know we've come back and modified totals before.
I can't hear two people at once, unfortunately, sorry. Do you want to speak to that?
It's,
What?
oh,
Oh.
Mr. Berry?
Sorry, I'm trying to whisper in her ear, and she can't stand to hear.
I can't hear
Yeah, she
two
can't
things
hear.
at once. It's
So
like
I was asking her
sorry.
to suggest, that maybe a contingency transfer at some point.
Mr. Berry, did you want to speak to that?
well, I can't speak to the contingency transfer, but the estimated life of the patches is, dependent on weather conditions, how severe a winter we have and things like that. I would expect, having patched other, specifically tennis courts, that it would probably be like 6 to 8 years. We would start seeing cracks develop. We could start seeing cracks develop sooner, but this would address the major cracks that are occurring now. But eventually, the entire court is just going to be patched, and it really needs to be ripped up and repaved.
Thank you. Representative Katowski?
Thank you. I support what Representative Whitney said, and considering the fact that the park in Fieldcrest was already eliminated from the CIPs this year, our other park in Deerfield, I don't think that should be eliminated. So I would love to support a lower number, but I don't agree with taking the Deerfield Park out. Thanks.
Representative, Mr. Burt, would you like to speak to something?
Okay. Cindy and I were just looking at the charter. Last year, for instance, we added that lead project in that wasn't in my list. From what I see, it's just the total. I think we can change an individual CIP amount and go above it, as long as we don't go over the total amounts of the budget. There's nothing under the RTM budget section that would affect that. So unless you know of something.
Yes, it's not going over your total. In other
Right.
words, someone wanted to add
Right.
$50,000 more on top.
Right, because remember the whole lead thing last year, the lead water? That was not in my budget.
Right.
So.
That was, right.
Huh. Okay. So Representative DeSiller Fleming.
I just have to advocate for putting the money toward Tanglewood. I happen to live in that neighborhood. I would say it's beyond patching. I'm obviously no expert. The cracks are inches wide. The park is used by, the neighborhood's going through a bit of a resurgence. The people that originally lived there are moving out. Younger families are moving in. There's dozens of kids at the park, access to the water. Do we know the difference in age between Tanglewood and Deerfield?
The difference of the age of the court?
Yeah, I mean, I know Tanglewood is like a 1964, 66 subdivision.
Right, yeah, I believe Deerfield was put in after that, but I'm not, I've been here 7 years, and I'm not sure how old the Deerfield development is. But looking at the houses, they look like they were built more recently than the ones in Tanglewood.
Thank you. I just think we do need to put the money toward an entire resurface. They're not patching. Thank you.
Representative Melvin Miller.
I wanted to ask, when you patch it, if we're voting for this patch, when you resurface and patch, is it like new? Does that make sense? Like, is it going to last as long as if you were to do, or just as long as you were to do a new court?
No, it will not be like new. It will be close, but the cracks that are underneath the patch will continue to kind of radiate outwards. So wherever the patch stops, where the current crack stops now, the patch will go a little bit beyond that. But what will happen is that crack will continue on the same path, and so there will be cracks that appear.
So it's almost like the earth, and like how you have earthquakes and how you, how you have an earthquake and things crack, and then you can.
Right,
yeah.
and that crack will continue. It won't be, as in the case of Tanglewood, it's not going to be an inch, 2 inches wide right away. It will start as kind of a hairline crack, but once that starts, then the weather gets in, and freezing, expanding, and contracting, it will eventually get bigger.
So eventually we would need to replace, like
Yes.
completely replace this park.
Yes.
And I also want to note that the CIP was for ADA compliance, and both parks are ADA compliant, correct? So this would fit into
Yes,
that?
the basketball court at Tanglewood is ADA compliant, and we are doing work in Deerfield to make that ADA compliant also.
So this would go under those regulations, because if it says in the CIP that there are new requirements for accessibility to park and recreation that took effect in 2012.
Yes, and we had a consultant come in, and they looked at all the recreational facilities in town, identified those that with improvements could become ADA accessible. We're not required to make every single facility ADA accessible. There's some just because of the physical limitations of the existing park or whatever, can't be made ADA accessible.
So despite, this isn't just about resurfacing a basketball court. This is about making these sites ADA compliant. I mean, this is how it looks like it originally started as a CIP for ADA compliance.
Yeah, but not all of these projects within this, because it's both, facility or park improvements and ADA compliance. So
Okay,
not
okay.
every single project that's identified or that's in this particular project is necessarily
But both
meeting the
basketball courts
requirements.
happen to be ADA compliant.
Yes, there's some more work that needs to be done in Deerfield, but yes, both could be ADA compliant.
Okay, and how long does a basketball court last for? Like, do you know when these courts were put in? Like, have they been fixed before? Is this just an ongoing problem, or?
Looking at the courts, I do not believe that they were fixed before.
So,
There's no signs of any patching that was done previously.
And how old are these basketball courts, would you estimate?
I don't know if the court was put in when the development went in. I'm assuming that it was, so I think one of the
So 40
members
years
said-
old, maybe, ballpark, basketball court?
Yeah, I would
ballpark?
say the one in Tanglewood is probably that old. I think the one in Deerfield is probably younger.
And
I
do
don't
you-
think that development is 40 years old.
Do you know how long these courts are supposed to last? I mean,
Well, a lot of it depends on how they're maintained. The community where I came from before, we actually were painting the basketball court, so we were putting a layer of paint on and putting lines down, and that helps fills in the gaps in the pavement. It's almost like putting sealer on your driveway, so that helps to extend the life of the court, and we were repainting courts and tennis courts also, basketball and tennis courts, about every 7 years. Because through use, the paint tends to wear off, and so you put a new layer of protection.
But that's just
Can we
repainting.
keep wrapping up? I have many other people who
I
want to speak to.
I apologize. I was just trying to understand. Okay, thank you.
I just wanted to kind of follow up on Mr. Burt and read the bit of the charter that's here that says that in no case can the final total of the budget let me read the whole sentence. The RTM may cut appropriations recommended in the budget and may by 2/3 vote of members present and voting restore cuts made in the department appropriation, provided that in no case can the final total of the budget or of any bond issue be greater than the proposed by the town manager or by the council, whichever is greater. So it's really an aggregate number, as Mr. Burt said. It's not which is not, what hadn't been my understanding. So I think we are within our latitude to propose a number as long as the aggregate number of the final budget, which hopefully we'll know in 20 minutes, is below or at what Mr. Burt had proposed. I do have a bunch of people who have raised their hands. Representative Bordelon is next.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. It would be helpful in future with these CIPs. I know you don't write them, Mr. Berry, and you're doing your best tonight, considering, once again, I feel Gary Schneider should be here to answer these structural questions. Who's going to be doing the repairs on these fields? Is that going to be done by our Public Works?
If the money is approved to replace the basketball court.
Yeah, this whole CIP.
Yes, that would be done by Public Works. And the other court, the repairs to the court in Deerfield would be done by a contractor.
Okay. Yeah, it would be helpful to have some age and some more information on these CIPs. Also, since we're talking about adding stuff back in, on the night of the Board of Ed, and this is in reference to the thing that was brought up.
Please, are you talking about this item or something else? We're really have to
Well,
stick
in
to
all
this.
fairness, I would like to challenge it just because I have a question in
If
regards.
only if it's on this item. I'm sorry.
Well,
It's
about
9:30.
adding. It's about adding in and saying the total number. Can I speak to that?
Okay.
So on the Board of Ed one, when I asked about the football field, it was stated that we couldn't add the 110,000 back in for the football because we couldn't do it. And then I was told that we didn't have the time. So there's a lot of CIPs we're asking to do. Are we going to have the time to do the fully renovation of this if we add it back in because we didn't have the time for the football field. So in all fairness, I just want to make sure if we're going to add something back in and we overlook the 110 under the same CIP that I had asked, that we have time to make sure we can do the full non-patch repair. Because that was the same thing and I was shot down. And if we fall within the same numbers of the 110,000, I think the football field should be done. But I was told we could not do that.
Have Gary come in and rip it out. Yeah.
Please, I'm asking you guys to keep your comments brief, because I would like to finish tonight, and I do have a long list of people with their hands raised. Unfortunately, you're not next, but can you respond to that?
So just so that I'm clear, you're asking the question, do we have the time to rip up the court, the basketball court, and replace it?
Right, under the Public Works, because we were told
Yes.
that we have the time.
Yes.
Okay, and, okay, and so we have the time for that, but we didn't have it for the, John Burt, we didn't have the time for the football courts. Because I know Gary's not here to defend it, so I'm just confused.
That's what Gary had indicated at the meeting. However, these CIPs are good for 5 years, so he was indicating the next year he wouldn't have time to do the field. It could be done a subsequent year under the CIP.
Okay.
Thank you. Representative Wells?
I support the 48,000, and I think this is it's a good judgment to restore 3 playing surfaces to a good condition. I mean, we could have come to us and saying we want to replace an entire court or playing surface and do one a year every year for a thing. But this is the route you've chosen, and we'll know in a few years, what needs to be done next. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative McDermott?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I'd like to stay with what the plan is now. I think we've given the Parks Director enough information to go forward, and the Town Manager. I'd like to call a question.
All right. We have a motion to end debate on the floor. It's not debatable, and it will take a 2/3 majority to, oh, yeah, is there a second? Representative Massett. So it's been made by Representative McDermott and seconded by Representative Massett. All in favor of ending discussion on this item, please say aye.
Say it.
Aye. Any opposed?
Oh, holy moly. Okay, I'm just gonna count.
Keep them up.
Evans, Melendez, Whitehouse, Whitney.
That motion fails, I can tell you by a simple, keep your hands up, though.
I have to get everybody's.
But I just counted and
Rogers.
it failed.
Rogers, Stevenson, DeSiller, Bordelon, Richards, Newsom, Chase, Towski, Whitney.
Do you have me already?
Already did it, okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
It's 12, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay.
12.
Any abstentions? One abstention.
31 minus 12. That's 19 opposed.
19 to 20, 19 in favor, 20,
No, 12 and 12 and 12 and 12.
12 were opposed.
Oh, 12 opposed, yes,
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
19 in favor, 12 opposed, 1
Yeah, it was.
abstention. That motion fails. So I'm going to go to the next,
No, 19 and, you
it's 2/3.
oh,
Okay.
sorry. Yeah, no.
All right, Representative Whitehouse.
Yes.
All right, so just so I understand correctly, it's only $7,000 more to be able to replace the court rather than patch the court, which is the thing we really should be doing? Is that correct?
Yes, that's
Okay.
correct.
And we can move 55,000?
Yes.
Madam Moderator, I'd like to move 55,000.
Point of order.
Point of order, cannot increase the manager's number.
I just read the charter, and the charter says we can't raise it above the aggregate number of the budget.
Point of order. I disagree with that interpretation, and I'll read section 9.4 again, but let's
It's
emphasize.
in everyone's budget, by the way, on page 29. You can all read it.
So, but let's emphasize the first part. So the RTM may cut appropriations recommended in the budget and may, and this is the part we want to listen to, by a 2/3 vote of the members present and voting, restore cuts made in a department appropriation by the council. No cuts have been made by the council. So we are still.
Yes, cuts have been made by the council. We just confirmed $402,000 worth of cuts have been made by the council.
Not on this.
And CIP.
Not on this line. And as referenced, as mentioned.
Keep
the town-
reading, please.
Well, that's the part I wanted to read because that's the part that's salient.
Well, it says, provided that in no case can the final total of the budget or of any bond issue be greater than that proposed by the town manager. I think that's the salient portion.
Well, that is as well. That's an aggregate, as you say. But we're voting, we have a spreadsheet where we have what the town manager recommended, what the town council approved, and then what we will ultimately approve. And it is my interpretation that we could restore a cut in that line item that we're voting on right now, which is the motion at hand that a council made, but there's none that was made. And also.
But that's not the determination of the town clerk, the
Well,
town manager, and
Well,
myself.
you're saying CIPs as a group or one line item.
But
right?
hold on, the town manager mentioned last year the CIP on water and education. Last year, I think there's $35,000 that was in the town manager's budget, was cut to zero by the town council that we then restored. This is a very different situation. And my understanding is throughout our budget processes, we have not been able to go above either the town manager number or the town
It
council.
was in excess. It was brought up to 50 for the lead.
So it went up above it?
Yeah.
So.
So there's a precedent, and reading it, I think that the town clerk and the town manager and
We have it
this
in black and white on that table back there, so that's what I wanted to see, if it was.
And we
if
do
that's what it
have,
was,
cuts that have been made by the town. So at this point, I'm going to accept that motion, which is,
Oh, sorry, it was 50,000. So 50,000 from the town manager, zeroed, this was last year, zeroed by the town council, brought up to 50,000.
Okay.
That's the final spreadsheet from last year.
okay.
So this is a very different situation. I don't think we're doing it right if we go above it.
But I am relying on the advice of my town clerk and the town manager and my interpretation of those words. And so I believe that we have the power to raise this.
I didn't see a second.
And so we have a motion on the floor.
The problem comes from when you read the charter, you know.
And I would agree, it wasn't my interpretation of that before.
It wasn't mine either.
We have a motion for 55,000, which is made by Representative Whitehouse and seconded by Representative Melendez. Would you like to speak to your motion?
Yeah, it sounds like the only reason that we're not, so we're spending 18,000, we'll have to spend 25,000 a couple of years later after the cheaper but not much cheaper patch wears out. Do I understand that correctly?
Yes, at some point, we can't continue to patch the court, and it would make sense if you repave the court. It's going to last considerably longer than continually doing these patches.
So the idea of 55,000 is, it seems like we came to 48 through the usual complex political meanderings, but that everyone seems to agree that we should do it right because it's going to save us almost $20,000 to do it right, and we'll have a better court in the process, and it just seems like a no-brainer. So,
Thank you. Representative Streeter? Jim Streeter, that is.
Thank you.
Representative Massa, did you have your hand up? I put you down.
Madam Moderator, my recommendation is not to vote on the new figure on the floor, and the purpose is we have a parliamentarian, which is the clerk. I'm not confident in the decision that's out there right now or the recommendation. I think it needs to be a legal decision because we've been going for years. I know in my 20 years experience on the RTM, we have never done this before. I do not want to open up Pandora's box by doing this. Let's take back to the 48,000, the original, that's my recommendation, so we don't get in a jam. Let the town manager get a legal decision on this to provide it to everybody, so the town council and the RTM are all on board with this. Thank you.
Yeah, can I speak to it?
Sure, please.
Right, to continue on with Representative Streeter, the charter does speak to a department's appropriation that's cut by the council. So if a department's budget is cut by the council, 2/3 of the RTM can restore it as long as it doesn't go above the manager's original proposal. So the original proposal hasn't been cut in this case by the council, or the original proposal from the town manager was 48, the original adopted was 48 from the council, so there's no cut to deal with. Adding money just because there's a aggregate cut, I'm not comfortable with it, but 2/3 is 2/3 of, so if the body wants to go forward, we can't stop you.
I respectfully disagree with that, and the reason is even in this year's budget deliberations, we have tried to go above the town managers with no cuts made by the council or anything else. We've tried to go above the town manager's figure, and we've been told, no, we can't do that.
I agree. I was agreeing with you, but if the body wants to go against what I'm saying, I can't stop them.
Representative Melendez? No. Representative Whitney? Did you have your hand up? No. Representative Katowski?
Thank you. I agree with Representative Streeter. I think we have a past practice precedent set, and I think that if you change the dynamic where the RTM can add money, that changes the whole political system in this town. And I think that that's something that definitely should be reviewed by the town attorney. And we have people on both sides of every vote. And for example, the football field, someone that's on the prevailing side could bring that back up. And we could just go on and on and on and add. Do we want to do that? I don't want to do that. And I think that we should follow the charter language and only restore money that has been cut.
Thank you. Representative Bailey?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I was just going to say earlier, but while I'm up here anyway, I am for the $45,000. It makes reasonable sense. Again, staggering projects and CIPs is the best method to go, and it shows continual improvement without having everything done all at once. And I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Representative Massett?
I agree with Representative Katowski and Representative Streeter. We should get a legal opinion between town council, my sitting on town council and doing budgets, and being a member of this body and doing budgets. It has always been that you cannot go above the manager's number for that particular account.
Or the council.
Thank you. Representative Bordelon?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I agree with Representative Whitney, Katowski, Streeter, and I apologize.
That's fine.
The lovely lady that just spoke, and I apologize, my brain is. I feel this is not great practice. If we start to do this, why wouldn't I want to be the last CIP then? Okay, so now let's say everybody else that went through that didn't get approved, if there were any, then they should come to the end, because at the end we can throw it all back in. So for bartering reasons, I would want to be at the end of this list then, is what we're telling everybody. That makes no sense to me. That's not fair or equitable to any of the accounts, because I stand behind the football field. Gary Snyder stated that he could not repair the field.
But we're not discussing that right now, please.
It's still, this is my example, and I want to say it. He said he couldn't get to it, but now we can do a whole surface of a court. I know it's smaller, but I feel like we could have made the time and approved the field and started the repairs. And that 110, based on what you're saying tonight, could have been approved.
But you've already said that, and it's not pertinent to this. Please.
It is pertinent. It's pertinent to. I agree with that. It's pertinent to this situation, and I don't think it's fair under the last CIPs that they can get whatever they want.
Thank you, Mr. Burt. Would you like to respond to that?
I really don't want to break precedents either. I don't think it's worth it. For next year, we can get a legal opinion in advance so we know going into the session.
Yeah.
But to change it midway, I don't think is the right way to do it.
Representative Newsom.
Can I withdraw the amendment?
Yes, you may.
Yes, you may.
I would like to withdraw my amendment. I was under the impression it was not setting precedent, and I wasn't trying to rewrite the charter. I just was just trying to
Will
fix a basketball field.
Representative Melendez withdraw his second? Thank you.
All right.
Good.
Representative Newsom, you're clear? Okay. All right, we have a motion on the floor for $45,000, unless there's a hand raised. I have a lot of hands here that were raised, but have they been quelled?
Yes.
Good. 45,000, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please raise your hand. What do you want?
Let me
Okay,
just see.
all the ayes, raise your hand, sorry. Sometimes it's hard to know.
Okay. White House, DeSiller Fleming, Stevenson, Richards, Bailey. Is that it?
So, what was that?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I do too.
Okay, 5, any abstentions? No, that motion fails, 5 in favor, 36 opposed. We have another motion on the floor, $48,000. All in favor, please raise your hand. All opposed? Any opposed? Any abstentions? That motion passes, 30 in favor, no, none opposed, 1 abstention. Thank you.
Moving on. CIP number 4H. Community Center Efficiency Lights. There was a motion for $42,000 made by Representative Chase and seconded by Representative Melendez. Discussion. Mr. Berry noted that this is to replace the lights at the community center. The total cost is $58,100. Groton Utilities has a cost incentive to reduce down to $42,000. Annual savings would be $13,090. Payback for this would be in 3.21 years. They are submitting a Neighborhood Assistance Act tax credit program. Right now, this would not cost the town anything. If other companies do not select this, they can ask the town council at a later date if they do not get the tax incentive, if they do not get the Neighborhood Assistant Tax Credit Program. The first step is to get someone else to pay for it, and then if it doesn't, then they'll go back to town council. Representative Starkley asked about the status of the building. How long do you expect the building to be viable for? Mr. Berry said this is a big unknown. They were moved into a building that the BOE said was no longer viable. It was not designed to be a community center. It is a 70-year-old school. There are issues that need to be addressed. The overall footprint is bad. It wasn't designed to be a community center. Mr. Locken noted that the long-term plan has been to build a community center. Representative Chase asked if they can hold off on the CIP until they find out if they can get the grant. And Mr. Berry said that this isn't costing the town anything. They will find out in October to November of 2019 before they know if they got the grant. It would have to be approved now because it's a reversible grant. Mr. Locken noted in terms of the budget, there is a big O for the funding. If the O, so the grant doesn't happen, it would have to go to the town council and then furthermore back to the RTM to get approved. 4 voted in favor, 0 opposed. Oh, I apologize. 4 voted in favor, 0 opposed, and 1 abstained. Madam Moderator, I make a motion for $42,000 for CIP 4H.
We have a motion on the floor for $42,000 for CIP 4H, which is the Park Community Center Efficiency Lights. It's been made by Representative Mello Miller and seconded by S. Powers. Is there any discussion on this? Representative Potowski.
Thank you. I just have a question about the minutes. Was it 4 in favor and 1 abstain?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
4 in favor, 1 abstain. Yeah, no, I'm sorry. So it would have been 3. I apologize. It was 3 in favor, 1 abstain. I apologize. My count was off.
None opposed, 1 abstention.
Yes, yes.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Yes, I apologize.
Any other discussion on this? Representative Whitney, excuse me.
I fully support this, as I expect others will. But I'd like to see motion sensor lights installed in the windowless rooms, particularly the locker rooms, because it's a very dark area when someone turns out the lights.
That actually is part of the proposal. That does, this includes motion sensitive, so after a certain amount of time, it would go off. If someone leaving the room didn't shut the lights off, they would go off at a certain point in time. And if somebody walked into the room, same thing, they would come on.
Thank you. So seeing no other hands raised, we have $42,000 on the floor for CIP 4H, Community Center Efficiency Lights. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? That motion carries, 31 in favor, none opposed, no abstentions. Now, I notice it is 10 o'clock, but I'm hoping that we can finish tonight. We have one more CIP and two other issues, which should be fairly straightforward, or two more CIPs, rather. So by a show of hands, who would like to stay? Thank you. That motion carries. You may keep going, Representative.
Last but not least, CIP 4I, Open Space Improvements. A motion was made for $105,000 by Representative Chase and seconded by Representative Melendez. Mr. Berry said that when the project on the Hill with the land swap included Boulder Heights behind Catherine Kolansky, the state said that they would agree under certain conditions. The $105,000 is an estimate from Public Works for required parking and signage. It's on a slope. There are some drainage issues. They have to be built up and it make it handicap accessible. There are parking requirements at Boulder Heights and an access trail. Representative Chase asked if this is the one at Catherine Kolansky at the top of the hill. Mr. Berry said there's parking at both the bottom and the top. They can't utilize the parking from EB because the state has said there has to be a defined space. There's not a trail, yet they are requiring parking at both ends as if a trail existed. Voting in favor, 4 in favor, 0 opposed, 0 abstaining. Madam Moderator, I make a motion for $105,000 for CIP 4I.
We have a motion on the floor for CIP 4I, Open Space Improvements for $105,000 made by Representative Mello Miller, seconded by Representative S. Powers. Is there any questions on this? Any discussion? Seeing none, we have a motion. We have $105,000 for 4I, Open Space Improvements. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? And did you see an abstention? So that motion passes 29 in favor, 1 opposed, 1 abstention. Thank you.
Madam, and the meeting adjourned at 7:59 p.m. Madam Moderator, I submit my minutes for Parks and Rec.
You make a motion to approve? Second. We have a motion to approve the minutes of the Parks and Rec Committee of April 22nd, 2019. It's been made by Representative Mello Miller and seconded by Representative Powers. It's accepted as amended by Representative Katowski. Is there any discussion or any other comments on those minutes? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Those minutes are approved. Thank you, Representative Miller, for standing there and being a good chair. Our next item on the agenda is, and thank you, Mr. Berry, too, for answering all our questions. We have CIP 1080, refinish exterior glue lamp beams. And we have Dr.
CIP 5L.
Oh, 5L, sorry, what did I say?
Okay. Well, it is 1080 budget.
Yeah, 1085, CIP 5L. And these minutes have already been read, I believe. Is that correct, Representative Newsom? You read these minutes, didn't you? Oh, you did it. Okay, it was on education. Sorry, can't remember. Actually, I was at that committee meeting.
We have to make a motion to, we're okay.
Representative Newsom?
We have a motion to put it here.
Madam Moderator, for the purposes of discussion, I'd like to make a motion for $100,000 for CIP 5L.
All right, we have a motion on the floor for CIP 5L made by Representative Newsom for $100,000, and it's been seconded by Representative Massett. And I will thank you for doing that. All right, so to remind us of where we were, Dr. Grenier, have you been able to find out any other information about other options for rectifying this really deplorable situation that we find ourselves in?
Well, let me see if I can put the, we've done a fair amount of homework, yes. Let me put the project in some perspective. The wooden beams need to be waterproofed. And so what we did was we contacted the manufacturer, who assured us that the beams had been waterproofed. It was a factory installation, so they were done initially, of course, prior to putting them in. And what has to happen now is, now that they've been installed for 10 years, we have to power wash them, sand them, and then reapply another waterproofing solution. But we did talk to the manufacturer, and they strongly recommended not encasing them. The idea being that you don't really know what's happening underneath the aluminum or whatever you encase it with. We also talked to one of the architects, not the architect who designed the building, but the architect, Perkins Eastman, who's designing our elementary schools that we're working on right now. And we also asked him about his advice about encasing it. He also thought that wasn't the best course. Someone else mentioned that it'd be a good idea to talk to the firm that was handling the wood finishing at the Mystic Seaport, and we actually found that person, and he basically said the same thing. In fact, he may be, not maybe, I'm sure he will be a bidder for this project that would sand down the wood. And he said, you know, that's essentially what they're doing at Mystic Seaport, and that will be the going forward, that as the surface wears with the weather, they'll have to be waterproof from time to time.
So this has been 9 years. Is that the schedule that they laid out?
I think about 10
is that the schedule they laid out 10 years ago when these were built?
Yes.
And we went into this knowing that at 10 years we'd have to spend $105,000?
Well,
110.
Yeah, I don't know. I wasn't around then, but yeah, I guess presumably, at least the Mystic Seaport people seem to think so. But we also spoke to the Mystic Seaport painting contractor, and he said, because I was pushing him for durability, there may be some better products.
Coatings, you mean?
Yeah, more durable, that perhaps would lengthen the extent of when it would have to be refinished. And then the last thing that we checked on, because we went up to the State Department, Department of Administrative Services, and we spoke to Bob Selmer, the state architect, and because there was a note that there may be some reimbursement for this, and in fact, he said there's a bill pending for reimbursement for this type of maintenance, but the bill has not yet passed, so no promises, but conceivably, of course, if the bill passes, we will, in fact, apply for reimbursement. So that's pretty much what I know, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Representative Stevenson?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. There was a lot of discussion that they agreed with the path of doing this. Did prices come up at any point in these discussions? Did they agree that $100,000 is the appropriate amount that we should be financing for this, or?
Well, I don't want to promise, but we believe it could be less than that.
But you need the...
When the bids come in, that was the initial cost estimate. It's when we went out for an estimate, but somehow estimates and bids tend to come in lower, so I would anticipate it to be a bit lower.
Thank you.
Representative Miller?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Dr. Grenier, you mentioned possibly some reimbursement. What bill, do you know what this bill is
don't.
going through?
Bob Selmer, the architect, mentioned it, so I don't know, I'm sorry.
And it's going through Connecticut State?
Yes.
The state?
Yes.
And it's in regards to these beams?
No, not these beams, this type of maintenance project, school maintenance project.
Oh, okay, okay. But you don't have any idea on where it is in the process or anything like that?
I don't.
And then, so you mentioned that Mystic Seaport has the similar beams, so they have the similar.
But they just built a new building that the whole exterior, that new sort of wavy-like building has lots of wood exterior. So that was the person we spoke to.
So they are going to, presumably, so anyone with these beams has to replace it every 10 years?
Well, not replace it, just
waterproof.
waterproof.
Sorry. And is there an alternative that we could do instead of, so that we don't have to keep paying out every decade?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, thank you.
Representative Whitehouse?
So I can certainly understand why we put the beams up. They're beautiful. They have the very modern look to the buildings. But when the Seaport does it, they can recoup that through marketing value. People see the new, I forget what the building's called, but the wavy building,
right.
And they might choose to come, and that brings in money, and that's what
right.
makes it worth $10,000 a year. Whereas I don't think our schools recognize that revenue. I might recommend that we check the 3 buildings we're now building and make sure there's not any white elephants on them that are beautiful but will require Houlihan beams or anything else that will need
the 3
major
new ones?
maintenance.
Yeah. Oh, believe me, we're checking.
Yeah.
There's no exterior wood.
Okay.
I know that for a fact.
Or anything else like that. Like, this will be beautiful. But it seems like this is something you need to do. And as is often the case in town government, the people responsible for what we're left with, none of them are here. And the people who are here say, I don't know how it got here. So it sounds like you're doing your best to make sure to mitigate the costs. And so I appreciate that. And it sounds like everyone's doing their best and with a unfortunate situation, so thank you.
Thank you. I would just note that at least one person is still here, and he's in charge of the new school project. Just putting it out there. Any other comments? Representative Bordelon?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I feel like we got a little bit more information. I feel like all the answers really weren't answered. We spoke to Sam directly when he was not at our committee meeting, and then we spoke at the RTM meeting. He said 5 to 7 was thrown around. Now you're saying 10. So I'm a little confused about that, because my understanding is that we're actually several years late on actually doing this maintenance, according to what Sam had told us at the meeting, that they should have been done almost, I think, 2 to 3 years ago. So.
Well, I know for a fact they shouldn't have been done 2 or 3 years ago, because it only came up this past summer when the maintenance staff was inspecting the facilities. It was not needed 3 years ago, 2 years ago, or 1 year ago. It is now needed, and as soon as it was identified as needing waterproofing, we put it on the CIP.
Right, that was not what was disclosed to us when we spoke, but I still feel that upon discovery and knowing that this was going to be an ongoing issue, I think it should be something that we have a handle on, and it's not like, oh wait, I didn't realize the beams are going to get bad. Like, we should have a plan of action a little bit sooner than hauling around and being a little bit more prepared. I still think there may be a better answer out there. That last I spoke to Sam, he said or stated that he wasn't sure he'd be able to get the full answer by the time on all of it. So this sounds like the satisfactory answer to me.
This is the answer. We weren't sure we could get to the manufacturer. The big thing was we wanted to know if there was a factory application, and there was.
Yeah, I'd like to move another number. I still think more information could be found on this. I'd like to move number 0. I think it should be fixed. I think there's more information out there. I think we're kind of rushing to make a decision on this. A few months at this rate, it's not going to change anything.
Is there a second? Is that a second?
Yep.
So we have a motion on the floor for 0 made by Representative Bordelon, seconded by Representative Katowski. I have Representative Newsom's hand up. Would you like to speak?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Dr. Grenier, I'm sorry I missed it. What is it that the manufacturer recommended for waterproofing?
What product?
Right.
Can you give me a hint at some of these waterproofing products? Yeah, Johnson's Water Seal, that was it. But the Mystic Seaport guy said there's a more durable product. So we're gonna look into that and put that into our bid specifications.
I just have to say, I'm kind of disappointed. For 6 months, the CIP was going to come up for a vote. We should have had our information long before this. So hopefully we don't do this again. Because now we're stuck deciding how much we need to spend. And we should have the information before we spend other people's money.
Well, we had the cost estimate, and the cost estimate was for $55,000 per building. And we received that last summer.
Representative Wells?
I'm sorry I didn't do this sooner, but I actually drove by and took a look at the building. It's a credit to the school system. It's a credit to the town. I think in fact, it's attractive, and you might even say magnetic, in that it draws students to it. You'd be proud to have your students in that school or in any school in town when you see that. And I think we're going to just have to do what we have to do. And Thompson's Water Seal is pretty much any carpenter will tell you, yeah, let's slap that on. So I think the Seaport, we're going to end up better. And whatever we do, we have to do it. It's a gorgeous building.
Representative Massett?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I cannot support 0 because 0 is that game we usually play with a lot of CIPs. Kick the can down the road. We have no idea how long it'll be before it comes up again, and we have no idea what is happening to those beams while we're hanging out for information.
Thank you. Representative Melendez?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I just believe with no known alternative solution, I think it would be prudent to go ahead with routine maintenance. So I would be supporting $100,000.
Representative Stevenson?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I'd like to move another number. I'd like to move $60,000 so we can do one school, find out what it will cost after the bidding process, and then have a CIP for next year to do the other school.
Is there a second for that?
Second.
We have a motion for $60,000 made by Representative Stevenson and seconded by Representative Bordelon. You've already spoken to it, I guess.
Yeah.
Elaborate more? No. I think you're good. Representative Rogers?
We got it.
I just want to say thank you, Madam Moderator. Nobody here wants to spend this $100,000. It's obvious that we would rather have another reality. But as a parent of a student at Northeast Academy, and also a member of this body, which is criticized often for not acting preventatively on matters, I think that it is in everyone's best interest to address this issue now. We know from anyone who's a homeowner here knows that a problem ignored escalates in price and in hassle every month, every year that you ignore it. So I am in favor of the $100,000 of addressing this issue now before it costs us more, and then going back to the drawing table and figuring out if there is a better long-term solution, but let's not spend more money in the long term.
Thank you. Representative Whitney, you had your hand up before. Sorry, I missed you.
I fully support the $100,000 to fix both schools. I agree with everything Representative Rogers said, that our 0 or less amount is just that we're trying to get a new reality. But the reality is, at least Northeast Academy's case, I spent about an hour under the area last week and looking up for some time instead of helping Kate take care of the kids, the Girl Scouts. But when I was looking up, it had been wet, and guess what? It's been wet a lot this season. And you could see that even though it hadn't rained that day, there was still a lot of that wood was still damp. And it looks worse than my porch does, and my porch does not look good. And then beyond that, these are truly structural beams. And we don't want to mess around with that. And looking up at it, it looks to me like there's mold or mildew growing into that. So we've already gone beyond the recommended lifetime of that seal. So we need to do something now and not wait another year. And I don't support doing just one school and then coming to the next, because the optics of it is, even though Northeast Academy might well be the one we hear that's in worse condition, I wouldn't want to support Northeast Academy and not support Catherine K. Thank you.
Representative Chase?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Do we know if there's any rot on those beams yet? Is there any way to
We know there's no rot.
There is none. Okay, thank you.
Any other, Representative Monahan?
For the same reasons that Representative Whitney said, these are structural beams. You don't want to mess around with them. You don't want to get rot. I support the $100,000. I'm disappointed that we didn't figure out that we'd be spending a lot of this millions, but that train is gone. It's too late. Or ship, whatever the right metaphor is.
That train has sailed.
All right, seeing no more hands, we have $60,000 on the floor for CIP 5L, which is the finish exterior glue lamb beams. All in favor of $60,000, please raise your hand. Me and two. Yeah, three.
Three, where's the third?
All opposed?
Katowski has three.
Any abstentions? No. Do you know how many were?
3 in favor.
Was it 29? Oh, 28. So that fails. 3 in favor, 28 opposed, no abstentions. We have another number on the floor of 0. All in favor of that, please raise your hand. And me.
Yeah, I got you
Oh.
first.
So that motion, all in favor? I mean, all opposed, sorry. Any abstentions? That motion also fails. 3 in favor, 28 opposed,
4 to 1.
no abstentions. And we have another motion on Francis Biggs. Get up. 100,000 is on the floor, so all in favor, please raise your hand. All opposed?
Katowski and Evan.
And me.
I got you.
Any abstentions? 1 abstention. So that motion, Stanford abstained.
Okay.
That motion passes 27 in favor, 3 opposed, 1 abstention. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Grenier. So we have 2 more items, and I believe, is Representative Katowski going to take the place of Representative Washington and finish up our Finance Committee minutes?
29.
We have Capital Reserve Fund and Capital Reserve accounts 510, 5010, and 1075. And then we're done.
Right next to each other. 29.
These minutes are being continued from May 1st. The next account is 1076 debt service on page 205.
That's We already did debt service.
Yep.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, all you have is.
All we have is 5010 and 1075.
501 and 1075.
Wait a minute. 510. Oh, sorry. Okay. Which one do you want to do first?
5010.
Okay. 5010 Capital Reserve, page 201. I'm going to read the number, and then Cindy's going to give us the correct number. I'm going to read the number from the committee because we didn't know everything that we know now. Right? Okay. This account is reduced at the time. This account is reduced $357,000 due to This account is reduced from $2,991,000 to, it's been reduced $357,000 from $2,991,000 due to town council CIP reductions. So $2,634,000 was moved by Representative McDermott and seconded by Representative Martin. 5 approved, 0 opposed, 1 abstained. So I'd like to move $2,634,000.
Who was the second? Thank you.
And the final number is $2,609,000. That's got to be another number on the floor. 626.
That's the motion that you made, right?
Right.
That's what I wrote down. So we have a motion on the floor for $2,634,000 made by Representative Katowski for account 5010, which is capital reserve fund.
Yeah, she's got a
And
different
I
number.
know, but we can put a motion, and it's been seconded by Representative Stanford.
So I'd
So
like-
Representative Newsom?
Madam Moderator, I'd like to make a motion for $2,609,000.
Say it like slower and louder.
$2,609,000.
Thank you. 609,000. Okay.
Who's second? Adams.
Is that correct?
Is
It's
that
hard
the
to
right
hear
number
up
for
here.
you?
That motion, we have an amendment to that motion made by Representative Newsom, seconded by Representative Adams, for $2,609,000. And that is the number that was put forth by Ms. Landry. Is there any discussion on that? Would you like to speak about it, or are we good?
That number represents the total amount of the projects that have been adopted by the RTM.
Thank you. So seeing no hands raised, all in favor of $2,609,000 for account 5010 capital reserve projects, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? That motion carries unanimously, 29 in favor?
Yeah.
29 in favor.
Okay, there we go.
You can hit the next one, the last one.
Is this the last one?
Yep.
Yeah.
This is the last account?
Yeah, but don't forget your minutes.
Drum roll, drum roll.
Okay. Okay, the last account is 1075, Capital Reserves Contributions, page 198. Due to town council reductions to CIPs, this account was reduced from $2,003,000. This is the general fund contribution for capital reserve projects. $1,646,000 was moved by Representative McDermott, seconded by Representative Martin. 5 approved, 0 opposed, 1 abstained. No, 0 abstained. I move $1,646,000.
All righty, we have a motion on the floor for account 1075 capital reserve contributions made by Representative Katowski for $1,646,000, seconded by Representative S. Powers. Is there any discussion of this? Ms. Landry?
I'd like to give the final number.
Yeah.
Is $1,621,000. That reflects changes made by the RTM.
$1,621,000?
Correct. You got to make the motion.
Yeah. Representative Whitehouse?
Oh, Adams had it.
Oh, what?
Oh, well, it's all right. Adams.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Representative
just do it.
Whitehouse?
Okay, I'd like to make a motion for that number. 1,621, wasn't it?
Second. Adams. Yeah, well, it's what she heard, I don't know, it's what I heard.
We have a motion on the floor for $1,621,000, or amendment rather, made by Representative Whitehouse, seconded by Representative Bailey. Is there any discussion of this? Ms. Landry, you want to speak to that one as well, perhaps, just briefly?
This is the total of the general fund contributes to the capital reserve fund.
All right, we have a number on the floor, which is $1,621,000, what?
I can't change it unless I want to go
Yeah,
back and change it.
$1,621,000. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? That motion carries unanimously. Thank you. We'll finish up your minutes then.
Thank you. I'd like to make a motion to approve the Finance Committee minutes from May 1st.
All right, we have a motion made by Representative Kotowski to approve Finance Committee minutes from May 1st, seconded by, I didn't quite catch that, Representative Martin. Thank you. Any discussion on those minutes? All in favor of approving those minutes, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, those minutes are approved. I hear a motion to adjourn by Representative Mello Miller. It was seconded by Representative Bailey. All in favor? In chorus. Thank you. Any opposed? Any abstentions? I'll see you next month. Thank you so much.